The Illuminati. The Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the Royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller, not some troubled youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
God's had to build my own family. I hate your son. I hate your son.
I'm happy to smash all of the crowns and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You in whose army, princess? You in whose army?
The Illuminati. The Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the Royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller, not some troubled youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
God's had to build my own family. I hate your son. I hate your son.
I'm happy to smash all of the crowns and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You in whose army, princess? You in whose army?
The Illuminati. The Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
What is up, everybody? This is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook live stream. Alright. Yeah, before I forget, don't forget everything that we do here is supported by the sales of that game that you just watched the trailer of, Neofeud. If you have not yet, you could tell all your friends that might be interested in the videos games, pick it up, wishlist it on Steam, etc. Anybody into cyberpunk or adventure games, as well as Patreon donations, of course, support everything that we do here as well. Just sharing the stream around, hitting the like button, etc. really does help us out with everything that we do here at the Silver Spook Cooperative / Commune / Hui, which is a Hawaiian, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Maori word that means worker-owned cooperative working together in mutual benefit without bosses, landlords, and other extractive parasitical entities like that. Anyways, what is up, everybody? Hope everybody is doing as well as can be managed under the current circumstances. I apologize if you have a circumstances that are not too good. I know this week has been a kind of wild week of doom, climate doom, economic doom, you know, eviction doom. IPCC put out that report, of course. War losses, you know, and kind of just it's been a day, a week, a decade, really a century, really 500 years if you look at it that way, but definitely about a definitely 4 decades for many people in the United States. But you know, the good news is, you know, that's what I kind of wanted the stream to be, is to be you know, to be counter cultural, counter hegemonic. The topic of today will be why everything is actually going to be okay. It's like the opposite of Silver Spook games. This is why everything is going to be fine. Not everything is just going to work out fine, and you know, you can just, that's not an excuse to do nothing, and definitely that does not mean everything's going to be fine. Go out without a mask into the nearest restaurant, theater, and you know, get low in the club. That's definitely not, and definitely don't do that surrounded by anti-mask and anti-vaxxers. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that in the longer run, in the medium to longer run, I do think that actually everything will work out. The probability of it, you know, to my mind is higher than it not. And I'll explain that. It's a long discussion, but because doomering out does benefit the, you know, the doomering out does benefit the ruling class or the parasitic class or whatever capitalist, oligarch, plutocrat, feudal lord, master, landlord, etc. It does benefit them if you just kind of give up. So we don't want to, because part of giving up is you know, it does cause a kind of believing everything is hunky-dory and perfect and we don't have to do anything causes people to kind of like not fulfill their responsibilities, or their kuleana, as we would say. But then also doomering out also says, well, since everything's screwed, I'm also not going to fulfill my responsibilities because there's nothing matters, you know. So both of those are like counterproductive, and those are not indigenous Pacific Islander and Asian ways. I see that Akemi is in the stream. Our good comrade our good indigenous Uchinachu or Okinawan or Luchu. I can't remember all of the different ways that they have been described from various languages, but Akemi Sho is one of our indigenous Asian comrades and supporters in this stream. And you know, in our way, you know, our belief. See, one thing that people often miss. Actually, give me one second. I gotta go apply something to another one of my screens, and I'll be right back. Listen to Comrade Rooster going off. Comrade Rooster's gonna take the mic and go on a speech about revolutionary, avianism, and watch the Neofeud 2 trailer while I do that. By the way, give me 1 second. Oh, Akemi says I got them all right. Wow, that usually doesn't happen. So usually I'm going a little bit too fast for my own good. My brain's moving at 30,000 cycles per second. My mouth is moving at 70 million, and then I screw something up. But yeah, Uchinaguchi Nankuru Naisa, which is something like everything will be all right. Yeah. Anyways, I don't often read chat. I only read chat for very select handful of people. No, it's I've been trying to actually catch up on a lot of that. What indigenous, the indigenous peoples in Japan that I'm actually as I said, I'm indigenous Pacific Islander and indigenous Asian, and they're really Asian and Pacific Islanders are deeply related and interconnected, as I often bring up. And so part of that is like in Japan there's an indigenous people, the Okinawan people, that are that predate the wider Japanese culture by thousands of years. Approximately, I don't have the exact numbers on, but it's like 4,000 or multi-thousands of years. And so those people, and they have a lot in common with the indigenous peoples of Hawaii, which I'm Native Hawaiian, of course, Samoa, Micronesia, etc. All the Polynesian, Micronesian, Melanesian peoples. And so I'm gonna try to catch up on that. We also have Okinawan and also Hawaiian plants growing in our climate preparation. Not apocalyptic preparation. It's for the successful indigenous future preparation. That's why we're planting. We're not planting that to prepare for, a flaming Sharknado, nuclear war, Mad Max world. We're planting that in preparation for mutually cooperative coexistence with nature and other people and other nations. That's why we're planting that. Just to be clear. Anyways, but yeah, back to the kind of topic at hand. The Ainu are also an indigenous people in Japan. Also, what's up, Mr. Red? Always good to see Mr. Red. But anyways, so the main topic though, it's going to be okay. It's like, I think it's very important, especially right now. I think the only way that it won't, and when Silver Spook says it's gonna be okay, usually when I say fun, when the Silver Spook fun fact, it's usually an asterisk next to the fun, and it's like disastrous makes you want to like get a rope and do something, not good to yourself. But I write science fiction, dystopian novels and short stories, ghostwrite them sometimes for richer, more privileged neo-aristos than myself. And I also create cyberpunk, kind of really not so nice cautionary tale, disastrous futures like Neofeud 2, Terminus Machina, Terminus Cyberstar. And then I get on stream and I get on Snowball, malfunctioning cameras that can't figure out how to like focus properly, kind of like somebody, you know, inhaling wildfire ash and a bunch of fentanyl that the United States propagates to itself, let's be clear, and then unable to focus. You know, I get on these cameras and on these microphones and I just talk about how really bad stuff is. You know, I don't really talk about how bad it is. I just try to be honest about reality. And it is honestly not good in places like the United States, Western countries, places that are successfully colonized by Western capitalist countries, imperialist countries. It is honestly not good there. But when Silver Spook says, like, you know, I usually don't talk about the more positive things. But if we're really being honest, the longer story is, the bigger story is that actually, you know, things will be very hard for many people, but they will get better. And the only way that they actually won't get better, you know, economically, and climate change wise, war, inter-ethnic racial strife, in terms of COVID-19 and pandemics, the only way that they won't get better is if people give up and doom her out. You know, the reason why the mainstream media, right, is constantly flooding you with negative stories is because they want you to give up. Because if you give up, the ruling class can rule over your ashes with more billions of dollars than everyone succeeding and flourishing and them only having hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know what I'm saying? They want you to give up. The United States, the military-industrial complex, Wall Street, the billionaire class, the corporations of the world, the financiers, they want you to give up. Jeff Bezos wants you to give up. Because when you give up, he can keep billions of dollars and have spaceships and 76 mansions on your dead bodies. Climate, war, you know, or in space. But he'll keep his mansions and you'll be suffering. But if everybody doesn't give up and actually works together and like starts actually listening across, you know, west to east, global south, global north, like actually really, and you know, and you know, internally colonized to colonizers like really start like actually cooperating and like undoing the oppression, they will only have like hundreds of thousands of dollars. They might only have one mansion, and that's not as good as 76 mansions. You know, that's not as, you know, being able to, you know, like Elon Musk recently said, somebody brought up, you know, there's a picture, right, of mass transit versus cars, and there's that infographic, right, where there's like the vehicles, yeah, it's like the people that can fit inside of a car versus people that can fit in a bus. And then Elon Musk, you know, this, you seen this one, right, where it's like, this is how many people you could fit in a bus, and that's how much space it takes up, and that's how efficient it is, versus all of those, you know, 20 times more metal and glass and windshield wipers and engines, you know, and just overpriced, you know, Tesla and Cybertrucks that have no brakes and windows that shatter even when you throw like a golf ball at them. And then Elon Musk has a little tantrum and he cries to Mommy and Daddy and the Emerald Mine, I need more blood money, you know. So like, you know, Elon Musk tweeted this out and said, well, he basically said, well, I mean, it's inconvenient and you know, you have to be around other people. Basically his complaint was, you know, the bus it makes frequent stops, right? Mass transit makes frequent stops, but that is why they're blasting the entire planet with negative stories and making you want to kill yourself or not participate, or making you want to give up or not do anything, and just throw your hands up and scream at the pyrocumulonimbus clouds above San Francisco or Michigan or Greece or, you know, India and all the COVID, and just give up. Because Elon Musk doesn't want to take the bus. That's basically why, right? Because he might lose his private Malibu, literal real world Iron Man with like, you know, 75 trillion gigahertz supercomputer that he gives ridiculous ideas to, like, let's make a like you know, produce for me a TED Talk, or a truck that, you know, looks like, you know, 90s retro video game vehicles like from Deus Ex. And, you know, he gives his super intelligent AI all these designs, you know, like, you know, the Vision the character in Iron Man, the computer that helps Tony Stark with his military-industrial complex weapons to kill Middle Easterners and Afghanis. Oh, I'm sorry, his world-saving democracy bombs, like Jericho missiles. You know, Tony Stark, like Elon Musk, right? He gives these ideas out to his computer, and then they produce them for him. But you know, like, you know, he has all of this technology. He has all of this money. He has multi-hundred billions of dollars, right? He has all these companies, and his employees are constant. But you know, and he just wants to be able to order around 1,000 professional engineers, roboticists, right? Brain-computer interface, you know, neural technicians, like for his, you know, he wants to be able to just tell them to do ridiculous things like, hey, let's just jam 1,024 wires really quickly into a pig's brain and then start inserting that into people's brains. And the scientists are saying that's actually not the best way to go about working on brain-computer interfaces, right? Or he tells his vehicle producers, right? He tells his Tesla workers he wants all roboticized plants, and the Tesla workers are like, actually, that's not really gonna fully roboticize. Is actually not the best way to go. Let's have we can have a lot of AI automation and roboticization in our Tesla plants, but you know, like we can't have 100%. And they made very efficient plants, right? The software engineers, the advanced adversarial network programmers, that's part of what goes into AI. The technicians and the scientists put together very advanced Tesla plants that pumped out lots of cars, but they still needed some humans. But they could build it very efficiently, right? Elon Musk threw a tantrum and screamed at all of the engineers and technicians and fired some of them and said, no, I want 100% AI automated plants. The new plants, and they said, okay, but it's not gonna work that well. And he said, I don't care. I wanna put a cool TED Talk where we're living in, you know, Bjork's All Is Full of Love AI video, where, you know, mechanical limbs coming out of the shadows are putting together my future, neural linked installed version of Grimes that does exactly what I want, and I become a men's rights activist, red pill piece of garbage. You know, I want the full AI robot plant that makes my full AI robot wives that look like Motoko Kusanagi and don't complain about it, and take my gaslighting, abusive male behavior. That's what Elon Musk is, an abusive piece of capitalist garbage and descendant of, you know, apartheid blood money. So, and they said, well, we can't really produce those kinds of factories without lots of problems. So I said, I don't care. So they made these new Tesla factories 100% AI programmed with no humans in them, and it was a disaster. They pumped out cars more slowly. They constantly had problems. But Elon Musk doesn't care, right? I just want it. Like, I don't care that mass transit is more efficient. You know, China has 50,000 kilometers. America can barely build 10. And it's like 300 times, you know, it's like 10, 20 years over time. And it's like 3-5 times over budget. And the budget was already ridiculous, right? And it's got cracks in the concrete, and the girders are all bending like spaghetti noodles, you know? Like so much limp American anti-vaxxers' penises, because COVID actually has unremediable impotence. You know, if you get COVID-19, there's a chance that you will not be able to, if you're somebody with a penis and you like having that kind of sexual intercourse, or like having it get hard, there's a chance, like the modern Viagra and those kind of pills cannot deal with the COVID-based impotence or COVID-based lack of erections. Anyways, so Elon Musk is gonna have a hard time with that, you know, because he's the guy who also hangs out with Joe Rogan and a bunch of right-wing podcasters and doesn't know anything about COVID-19. He said that, you know, COVID-19 will be finished in April 2020, so he's gonna get COVID. He's already probably had it, so that's gonna be a real problem for him. I don't know how he's gonna deal with that one, but you know, he wants to have his factories. He wants to be able to order engineers and scientists around. He wants to have his Tesla Cybertruck or whatever. He wants to have everything that he wants. He wants his factories AI, but the things that he wants are actually bad for the masses of people. They're actually not scientific, right? They're not the best, most efficient engineering and science and mathematics and technologically based way to do things, right? It's like having more mass transit is actually better for the environment, for economic costs, for human existence, right? Having more trains, having ventilators is better than having sleep apnea machines, right? Elon Musk said, I'll solve COVID-19. He donated 2 broken sleep apnea machines to California. And then he had a TED Talk, and he had write-ups in BBC, New York Times, and Democracy Now! About how awesome he is, right? That's for his self-aggrandizement. Did that help California to have 2 broken sleep apnea machines? Help you if you like snore, have a serious snoring problem, and you have sleep apnea. They don't do anything for COVID-19, right? So he wants to run everything terribly and into the ground, the way that he runs his companies, and then breaks the legs of his unionizing workers when they ask for raises, right? He's a terrible human being, and he's a capitalist piece of garbage, and he's an idiot. Also, in science, pandemiology, the sun is not going to go red giant 500 million years from now. It's 5 billion. He's a total clown, like the entire Western fake civilization that never was. It was always barbarism. And so, the reason why you're being blasted with all this doomering stories is because Elon doesn't want to ride the bus. Elon doesn't want to give up control over thousands of engineers, scientists, and other workers' day-to-day lives and how they do their science, how they do their engineering. He doesn't want to give up control. He don't want to give up oligarchic idiot control like the Sun King Louis XIV. They don't want to give up control of how to farm, how to build wagons, how to run France and other parts of the empires, and run them terribly, right? But they people like Elon can continue to run because why? Because they just use mass violence to shut people up, like the Sun King, right? Oh, this is ridiculous. Why are we all speaking Castilian English? Well, if you don't speak, why are we speaking Castilian Spanish like this? Well, if you don't speak like that, we'll cut your head off. I'm gonna use mass organized violence to beat you. Oh, if you don't, this is terrible. Why are we like not paying our scientists and technologists and engineers at the Tesla plants, at SpaceX, like good salaries? Well, if you don't do that, I'm gonna have mass organized police beat the crap out of you. So shut up and take your crappy wage and show up to the plant. The mass organized violence of capitalism itself. If you don't do this job, show up to the crappy Wendy's and the McDonald's, or I'm taking your $800 away, and and you're all gonna starve and be homeless. There's like that guy came out on Fox and said, in the military, we don't feed our dogs until nighttime because a hungry dog is an obedient dog, right? That's the violence of forced starvation. It's the violence of withholding people's basic needs. So that's the way that capitalism and the Western world has always operated. Capitalism they call it labor discipline, right? Just like removing access to housing, healthcare, food, etc. That's why there will never be universal healthcare in the United States. How are you supposed to starve the dogs, that's your workers, of basic healthcare? Homelessness, there needs to be homeless people in the street in every city in the United States. Otherwise, how are you gonna threaten the dogs, starving them of housing, right? Because the Fox News anchor is correct in the sense that like beating the crap out of people, whipping their back, removing their food, removing their housing is one way to get people to do things. It's what the West has always done. It's what France did. It's what Britain did to all of its Stratford upon Hull impoverished people in their factories. It's what the feudalists and capitalists did to their serfs. They said, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to beat you up. The knights are going to come crack your skull, and then the cops in London are going to come crack your skull. In the feudal British lords would come crack skulls with some of their men with swords, or just kill people if they didn't do what they say. And then the capitalist British factory owners will come order some cops into the factory if you didn't want to put together some fancy overpriced British or later on Louis Vuitton knickers inside of our cotton, our new Luddites smashed. Well, then we smashed some Luddites with some cops, right? Loom factories. So, but that's always been the way. That's always been the way of the West. Beat up on everybody who doesn't want to do exactly what the feudal lord, the capitalist, the boss, the imperialist, nation to nation, right? If you don't do what we say, we're going to just kill everyone in China and force opium into your mouth to take $200 trillion worth of your silk, your tea, your rubber, and every other thing we can get, and your people to build our infrastructure, right? But that's always been the way of the West. This is not like anything new, right? But that way will stop soon. that way is not going to work anymore, because communism is, you know, the communist parties of the world, the biggest ones in the planet are, and the peoples of those indigenous regions, most of them are actually in Asia. The largest successful actual civilizations, there's never been a civilization in the West, but the largest actual successful mutual cooperation, ways based on, you know, peaceful trade, coexistence, right? Those will negate the entire Western Roman imperialists, you know, capitalists. They were capitalists, by the way, in Rome. They had financiers, who, insurance adjusters, who burned down houses and such, and they collected on that, on the insurance. They had all the same kind of schemes. They weaponized the debt. They used the denarius. They inflation chopping the Roman silver coins up. They did all the things that America is doing. This is not anything new. The West has always used finance, capital, and other forms of capital, along with brute force, along with blood dynasty, along with racism, along with patriarchy, along with cis-heteronormativity. It's always used all of those tactics to different and lesser degrees throughout its entire history. It's a failed, backward. It is a very sad, doom-filled place. But don't doom her out just because you're from the doom-filled place and the doom-filled culture. Just because you're from Mordor, it doesn't mean, you know. And I know, like, Tolkien was a racist, imperialist piece of garbage, and orcs are a terrible codification of black and brown people. But just because you're from the actual real-world Mordor, which is all of Europe, you know, where Tolkien is from is Mordor, you know. It's called the Western White World. Just because you're from Mordor and there's ash everywhere, like, oh my God, I can't breathe, there's COVID, and crossed with burnt, redwoods that George Lucas used to film Ewok speed races in, and now he can't film any more Ewok races. That's why all of American cinema is dying. Oh no, I can't breathe, I'm in Mordor. You know, it's all burning up. Pyrocumulonimbus clouds filled with lambda variant and delta variant and epsilon and delta epsilon. I can't breathe. You know, also I can't breathe because I'm black in America and I'm getting my neck fucking stomped on. That is terrible as well. All these things is terrible. But just because you're from Mordor, that doesn't mean that the entire Middle Earth and all of the world is Mordor. Mordor is a very small portion of the world. You know, it's mostly over there in these Five Eyes. You know, mostly G7. You know, that's Mordor. And but their time is limited. You know, their time is coming to an end very soon. Let me take this off of the screen. So we have to keep that in mind. But that's very important. That's why you're hearing the IPCC. Why the IPCC is fine. You can do your climate science, and that's important. But the reason why it's all you're hearing is, oh my goodness, 1.5 degrees warming is locked in. Oh my God, we're totally screwed. Planet's on fire. Everybody knew everything that was already in those IPCC reports. You know. Oh, Extinction Rebellion, we'll have to like, let's just like push for more electoral change. I mean, part of it is like people freak out, but a bunch of British tea-sipping, you know, Tolkien stands are sitting over there like reading their Orwell, and they're like, oh my God, authoritarian regimes, and blah, blah. You know, like, why are you reading anti-communist fascist books? Orwell was a total clown. I actually got a post about that. You know, but B, you know, just relax. Britain is a sad little cold wet rock that pioneered a lot of the planet's colonialism, you know, and now Mordor is gonna go fall into the ocean. But it's okay because you know the people of Mordor can have detoxification from Western barbarism. You know, you will not, despite what a lot of these claims of the ethno-states that the black and indigenous people want to build. This is nonsense. We know, like, there will just be remedial. You know, not re-education camps, just education. Not re-education camps, it's just education. Like I was a social worker, STEM teacher. You know, it's like, you know, just helping people not be self-harming and other harming. You know? Like, hey, maybe like drug dealing and like being abusive to your family is like not a good thing. That's not that, like, you know, being abusive to self and your family and your neighborhood and your country and the world is, you know, all of the West needs like deep therapy, you know, and like actual therapy, not the kind of that they send you to so you can get some more Prozac and make more money for pharma billionaires. I mean, like actual therapy, right? Actual education, you know, actual like healing, you know, That's what's coming for Britain. The sad wet rock that's currently sending the USS War Criminal. I'm sorry, not the USS, the UKK, or whatever they call aircraft carriers in the British. They're actually building aircraft carriers so they can be more like America. It's very sad. Britain, don't spend all that. Don't spend $1 billion or 10 building aircraft carriers with America. You know, come on. You got all these starving. You got 160,000 people died of austerity in Britain. You have one of the highest COVID death rates, higher than the United States. You know, you're like a planetary money laundering festival. You know, you gotta stop wasting money. BBC, why are you putting out all these America pro-imperialist stories about China bad, China nuking Uyghurs? Bono's gonna do a Tibet liberation concert to free the CIA asset that is the Dalai Lama. What the BBC? You know, China is forced Uyghur making solar. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? You know, just admit you suck and you're like a vassal of the United States. You know, like stop doing its bidding. You know, I know it's gonna be hard because you're not gonna take any more military-industrial complex money and all of the people with like, you know, any kind of university degree and any intelligence in Britain who put out lies 24/7 about, you know, and you know, but you know, you gotta like stop that. You know, you gotta stop that. You gotta go through Mordor citizen rehabilitation. That's what you gotta do. You know. Oh my goodness, yeah. I'm sorry. You have to, first step, number one, admit that you're a shithole empire and that your monarchy is full of racist fucking literal Nazis like Prince Philip, and well, thank God he's dead. And you know, you haven't done anything positive. You brutalized billions of Indian and Chinese people for centuries. You know, you ran the Opium Wars. The sun didn't set under your gun that you slaughtered in genocide in Africa and slavery from you participated in. Just you gotta start getting better. Stop blaming stuff on China. Stop doing the United States Empire's military industrial bidding. You know, you don't have enough metal coming out of your Mordor mines, you know, to make another aircraft carrier. You just gotta settle down. Australia too. Stop doing America's military industrial bidding. It's a waste of your time. Just start participating in mutual cooperative trade with China. It's your biggest trading partner. Stop pretending like you're gonna make a war with them. You're not gonna do it. You know. Well, let's come up with something like the Australian government and Australian ruling. You know, all the puppets over there going, oh, what's our story so we can collect another $100 billion of American military and CIA money? Let's start a war with. We need a big threat so that we can justify all this military spending. Start a war with China to defend our trade with who's our biggest trading partner? China. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. Stop being a giant baby, all of Australia, especially your liberal and conservative middle and upper middle classes. Stop being racist against the indigenous people of Australia. Grow up and start trading with China and fucking be nice to them. America is not gonna give you as much money, but in the long run, you will be better off. Britain, same thing. Germany is starting to figure this out, but they should figure it out faster. Let the Nord Stream 2 happen. Let the Belt and Road come through. Italy is having port. Greece is having ports built. Hey, you get ports. You get ports. As Yanis Varoufakis said, China builds bridges, America blows them up. America needs bridges. America should be asking China to come build some bridges because America will never build a bridge. America prints up, you know, hey, $3 trillion infrastructure bill. You know, 2.95 trillion of that is going to go straight into JP Morgan, Chase's CEO, Jamie Dimon's pocket. The other half's going to go into Elon Musk's cyber dildo that he's going to use because his penis broke because of COVID-19. That's going to cost $3 billion and it's made out of emeralds and it's going to be sold exclusively to Gates, Bezos's, and Walton's. And then the rest of the money that was supposed to go to build America's bridges is just going to get lost somewhere between anti-vaxxer, colloidal silver charlatan, and Mike Pompeo's brother in a trip to the Bahamas to buy his third, you know, private mansion there. So America will never build any more bridges, no matter how much Biden fails to FDR even a pale shadow of the not even successful left revolution. There never was a revolution in the West. Savior of capitalism, FDR. Biden is a pale shadow of FDR, and FDR is just a pale shadow of a ghost of what America needed. Right? It's not a nice life for middle-class white people in the 50s. That's what FDR got. And black and people, brown people, and women and indigenous people all thrown under the bus. And Biden is not even close to that. So America will never build bridges again. America can't build America can't, build a freaking toothpick bridge in a second grade or STEM class that can support more than 5 ounces, because it's all built out of Elon Musk's, flaccid. I was gonna say that's I don't think he has enough penises to build that many bridges, but he can't. That America is not capable of using its resources, which it has the greatest in the world of wealth, of assets. It's got all the money. It's got all the resources, right? As Richard Wolff points out. But it is incapable because of its Westernness, its barbarousness with capitalist characteristics. It is incapable of deploying those resources to do the things that it needs to save its own people and even its own country, its own economic base, its own existence, its people's faith in the United States. Right? Just as Rome self-imploded, that's the way of Western barbarism. It builds up, it expands, and it implodes. Right? When the last, feudal or Roman, Roman Caesar or British king, son king or otherwise, capitalist slave owner, capitalist neo-feudal billionaire, private spacecraft company owner, when the last one of those flies his last jet into the exosphere, but then he can't make another one because all of his workers are dying of COVID-19 and all the semiconductors are not coming over anymore because of ridiculous shooting yourself in the foot trade wars and ridiculous international military industrial complex policy, then the Western cancer implodes, right? The Western empire implodes. It's just how they do this again and again and again and again and again and again. And so this America is in that phase of we're not able to do anything. We can't build bridges. So as Giannis said, right? China, there's a very important story. I bring it up often, but it's very important because it actually shows that the Eastern indigenous, mutually cooperative, mutually coexisting, we call it aloha ana kuli ana pono, right? A society that exists in mutual existence and mutual cooperation with each other, with nature, and nation to nation, right? Of China, 56 ethnic regions, 4,000 years. They don't want an ethno-state. They don't want a Chinese ethno-empire, Just like the black people don't want a black ethno-state, so that white people, instead of white people putting black people in chains on slavery, cotton plantations, and then now white people putting black people in chains in prison slavery, wildfire fighting, 25 cents an hour firefighter departments, which is what they do now, right? Black people don't want that. They don't want to just put white people in chains and make, black people's Kanye West shoes. I know Kanye West is a sellout fucking gusano, but, but the black people don't want that as a whole. They want liberation and equality, right? The Hispanic people don't want to take all of the white people that are currently keeping them under the floorboards, like Nancy Pelosi, right? And berating all of her mansions, $10,000 magnetic levitating fancy ass bed, designed by some nephew of Elon Musk, right? And then Nancy Pelosi's $10,000 levitating magnetic bed being made by $3 an hour under the table Hispanic maids. Nancy Pelosi berates the crap out of them, right? And despite her being like Italian and not being white at one point, but now she's got her cut of whiteness and racialized capitalism. Now she tells all her Hispanic maids, clean that bed, you lazy, and says a racist slur against them and just berates them and underpays them. If you don't clean that bed better, Juanita, I'm gonna send you back to Honduras or whatever shithole country you came from that I helped bomb and helped send death squads and help imperialize. And the Hispanics, the Latin people, they don't want to just like put Nancy Pelosi into a maid outfit and make her clean their bed. I mean, there's some people be like, oh my god, I personally really don't like that person, but that's not what they want. They don't want to just flip the script and put like Latin and black led barbarism. We want actual equality, and the story, the way that China treats Europe is actually very clear. They didn't say, the Chinese could have said, oh, I see how the German corporations and American corporations are treating Greece. The way they were treating Greece was literally bloodletting that country in austerity for years and years and years, based on Goldman Sachs, American mega bank that literally, with the oligarchic, like with a handful of seller oligarchs, the Gusanos of Greece, who sold their people out. The oligarchs took their Greek governed sovereign debt, made a imagine like a $1.5 million no income, no jobs, no assets, subprime McMansion in Florida loan. You know, I talk about those a lot often. That was sold to a Applebee's waitress. Imagine a subprime $1.5 million house that's gonna definitely explode because a waitress that makes $10 an hour or less is not gonna pay back a $1.5 million mortgage. Imagine that for an entire country. It's called the Greek sovereign debt crisis that was manufactured so that they could finagle Greece into the EU, which is all an American imperial project to make sure that Europe stays under and for the benefit of the capitalists and the imperialists in the United States, by the way, with the complicity of a lot of people in Brussels and in Germany and Austria, to their mutual capitalist benefit, by the way. So the Greeks who were forced to pay all this back, their hospitals were gutted. They had literal skeletal hospitals. They had like double-digit rises in suicides, in drug use, in poverty. Pensions were like cut by 2/3. It was disastrous. It was horrific. Their infrastructure was falling apart, kind of like America's infrastructure falling apart. It's the same thing they did to Greece is what America's doing to itself now. Well, not exactly the same. It's you know, but it's not too different. You know, drug use skyrocketing. People, you know, all the life expectancies falling. People like freaking out. A lot of people leaving the country. This is what they did. America did this. The capitalist ruling class, Goldman Sachs specifically, did this to Greece with the complicity of Brussels and the EU and the Bundesbank. Yanis, the Greek finance minister in this time, elected by a kind of progressive left government, went to Brussels and said like, hey, can we're never gonna be able to pay back any of this debt if you don't let us like invest some money in our building some kind of green renewable technology. He really wanted to get in the green Euro deal, right? That's what the M25 was kind of based on, a mass progressive international, like this idea we're gonna rebuild not by crushing and starving everyone, destroying our roads, destroying hospitals, destroying ports, right? Destroying our infrastructure, right? This infrastructure bill, they're talking about America now. America's not going to do anything because America's going to grease itself. I mean, GREECE itself. Not like, go grease lightning. It's going to go crash, grease and lightning. It's like America is like a fucking 200 mile per hour Tesla slamming into the rock wall called, you know, climate and economic limits of capitalism in the face of the Great Wall of China. But anyways, the Greece was bloodlet. It was horrible. It was horrific. And they had the far right party, just like America's Donald Trump. The Golden Dawn neo-fascist party that it was like a 3-armed swastika. It's like basically what it was. Donald Trump and Brexit. It predated them by about 8 years. So America literally did, and I think America tested what it wanted to do to Britain and America and the rest of the world, at least the formerly first world, by testing it on Greece. So what happened if we just like imploded completely all the infrastructure, just took all the public spending, education, housing, healthcare, roads, ports, everything, and just like let all the bridges fall apart? What would happen, right? Give it all to sell all of it, the water infrastructure, everything, to private capitalist hands. That's what it was. It was a smorgasbord for private equity firms. You know, all the vulture capitalists, all the, you know, the economic hitman, all the usual suspects, right? That come swoop in, buy up at pennies on the dollar, entire, you know, miles and miles of Greek beachfront property, their ports, their roads, their highways, their everything, right? Sold it off to some pension fund that, some hedge fund that Gates and Bezos and Walton all have their money managed by. They don't even know where the money is going. That's one of the things that the billionaires will never tell you, is they don't even know what their money is even doing. But what their money is doing is the logic of capitalism, which is like to go to the worst possible places, to make the most money, to destroy the most environment, to crush the most people, and burn the most oil, and nowadays, and you know, historically, make the most Tomahawk missiles. That's where every one of the so-called, anything that any billionaire says, I'm going to do for the climate, I'm making a green this, I'm making a green that, they have 10 times more money in the military-industrial complex, and in policing, and in prisons, and in dirty coal, and now in mining Greenland for everything that they have, because that's the capital can only go to acquire more capital, and that's the things that are making money quickly in the short term are always going to be more destructive than things that are better in the long run. And also, they're always going to be things that are against the interests of the masses of the people. So anyways, So Greece was suffering terribly, but and that's what the United States and the rest of the EU were doing to Greece, right? And lots of other countries, not just them. They were doing the EU and America, the Western European countries in particular. They've been doing this kind of thing to all of the world, the development of Africa, pillaging of Asia, Pacific, etc. The WTO loans, the neo-colonial period, 152 trillion stolen from the global South, from just from 1960 to the present. That's like the estimated total wealth pillaged from the minerals in Africa, products and things in Asia, slaves that have been trafficked, which still exists, 152 trillion. Anyways, so they did that to Greece. And what happened to Greece? Greece said, can we please, can you stop just like forcing us to pay back these unpayable loans by chopping up our infrastructure, taking our pensions, right? Making our pharmacists kill themselves because they don't want their own children to be forced to pay for their bills and their housing that the 60-year-old pharmacists couldn't afford. Like 60-year-olds or 70-year-olds who's trying to just have an existence, but they were so destroyed by all their lost earnings that they were killing themselves. People with like masters and doctorate, MD degrees, just like offing themselves because of how badly public services were destroyed. That's, and so then Giannis said, like, let us invest in us, let us rebuild infrastructure. We'll build green solar plants. We'll build like car manufacturing, electric car manufacturing plants, solar panels. We'll do anything. Just invest in some actual productive development. Don't just de-develop us like we're an African country basically, and then strip us of everything that we have. And then Wolfgang Schäuble of the EU, speaking on behalf of the capitalist oligarch powers of Europe and America, and Goldman Sachs specifically, who was taking a lot of the money was being funneled through the German banks straight back into Goldman Sachs' massive debt scheme, right, to shuffle Greece into the EU. They said no. Political elections cannot be allowed to alter economic policy, and by economic policy, capital policy. So basically, like, it's literally saying what the West is, which is that there is no such thing as democracy. It's a joke. The ruling class, whether through feudalism, blood dynasty, direct orders, or capitalist, more shrouded, right? Thrones built rather than from emerald and diamond, right, mined from global South countries, rather than the crown jewels sitting on the head of some, useless, mediocre, but horribly malicious oligarch, right, a king or an emperor or whatever. We're gonna build our thrones out of stacked $100 bills to the height of stadiums, and it's called Jeff Bezos. It's called, the capitalist class. And elections, democracy is a joke. That's what the EU said to Greece. Democracy is a lie. We never had it. Everything that we've always ever done has only ever been for our ruling Roman imperial, British or French feudal, and American and EU capitalist oligarchs. That's the only thing it's always been ruled by a bunch of dynastic spoiled rich pricks. So Greece, you will take every hospital and every beach and every road and every pension and every nurse and every doctor and every teacher and every school will be stripped to ash, and we will take it all. Because that's how we operate in Europe, in Western Europe in particular. That's how we operate as these this terrible offshoot, this Roman virus variant, UK 366, that's Britain, the German Deutsche Bank, Roman variant D3C775, and the US, the US DT2345, that's the MAGA variant, and then now the Joe Biden JB3566 variant of neoliberal or neoconservative Roman virus, the Western imperial virus. You will give it all, because that's the only thing that we do here. We don't do democracy. Democracy is a joke. I know Greece, you think you invented democracy. Let me let you in on a little secret. Greece never had democracy. Plato was a fascist, and they literally had an oligarchy even in their own time. A lot of people were slaves, and the only people that voted were a small select handful of people that they considered citizens. But citizens was short for the small number of people, most of whom are part of or close to the oligarchic ruling class. Hey Greece, this is the real joke. You invented democracy, but you actually didn't invent anything. You always lived a lie. And we, the German and American finance capitalists headquartered in Brussels, we are just enforcing the continued Greek lie called democracy that you never had. So give us all your roads. I don't care if your poverty rate goes to 80%. I don't care if children flock from Greece at the age of 22 to find a life in China, because you aren't having any life, because that's what runs Europe. That's what runs the West. And Giannis said, oh no, this is fucking terrible, you know? We don't have any ports. And you know what China did? China said, hey, you guys pillaged $150 trillion worth of our silk, tea, you know, slaughtered us, call us yellow, backward, degenerate, bat market, disgusting, and all these sick men of the East. You call us all these bad names, Europeans and Westerners. But we don't want war. We don't want to colonize you like Europe, Germany, Britain, and America are doing right now. We're not gonna do that. You know what we're gonna do for you? We're Europeans. We're gonna build you ports. And Giannis said, well, hey, you know what? This deal that you cut, I think somebody from Shanghai or Taiwan, one of those American or British, fucking Twinkies did this deal, because you gave me 67. It's actually a better deal, even 67%. 67% of the profit from this new port of Piraeus that you're building. The Chinese put huge investment to actually build actual bridges, like actual bridges, not like toothpicks, on an Elon Musk TED Talk. Not a bunch of, not bridges made out of hyper financial, Ponzi scheme paper, right? Like the way that they build their aircrafts in the Boeing that only crash nowadays. India is happy to accept these planes now, apparently, because India likes their Indian people dying for their oligarchs because they've taken too much of that. They got coughed in the mouth by the Roman descendants, and then India got the Modi imperial virus. But anyways, China said, we'll build your port, and Greece said, well, hey, 67%. That's better than what the 90% that the corporations, or the 100% that America and German corporations and their banks were taken from us. But hey, 67, that's still not good enough. China, you're building these ports, you're building these roads, but 67% is going to China. We have subcontracted labor, basically labor that has very little rights and ability to collectively bargain. That's not fair. And I don't know what Shanghai, fucking Gusano Chinese clown made this deal, but I gotta talk to Xi. Can we talk to the actual majority of China, the Communist Party in the mainland China? Can we talk to somebody from the actual adults in China, not the clowns that went along with Hong Kong pillaging and Shanghaiing their own people on a boat? Can we talk to the real people in China? And Giannis said, this is not fair. 67%, no bargaining rights for the workers, or very little. Pensions are not. There's not enough money going back into Greek pensions to refuel the social programs that keeps our country alive. And then the Chinese, they went back to Beijing. That's part of the thing. It depends on who you're dealing with. It's like in Hawaii, same thing. If you go talk to the Hawaiian that's getting $600,000 or $1 million a year to throw Hawaiians under the bus at the Hawaiian homelands right now, they're setting fire to Hawaiian homelands right now, literally letting brush fires break out and doing nothing. If you talk to that Hawaiian, you're gonna get one story. If you talk to the indigenous mass resistance against colonialism, you're gonna get a different word, right? Now Hawaii's not even close to it. We don't have any real power here, relative to what China has. But it went back to Beijing. It went back to the Communist Party of China, and they said, you're right. That's not fair. The Chinese company that's giving you 67, while that's better than any German and American capitalist corporation, not that they don't have any capitalist entities, but that deal is not good. That is not fair. That is not dialectical. That's not what China wants to do with mutual cooperation and not biggering thy neighbor at the CPC's 100th anniversary speech. They said that's not what we want. We want to, all countries will work together for mutual and equitable benefit, win-win. Richer countries must give and empower and lift materially in real development terms, concrete development terms, those poor countries of the world. That's literally in Xi Jinping, and that's not just him. That's the speech of the greatest Communist Party and the greatest actual existing left power in the history of planet Earth. Period. It's not even close, and that's not up for debate. That's just science. The same way that I'm not here to debate anti-vaxxers, and I'm not here to debate whether climate change was caused by fossil fuel, right? There's people who still want to do that. That's not up for debate. You don't like that, you can leave this fucking channel. You can go look it up and figure it out. But if you don't, that's just a material fact. 1.4 billion people, poverty alleviation, the greatest success in human history by every honest economist, including Jeffrey Sachs, a Harvard graduate. But anyways, that's not fair, Greece. We're not here to. We're not a Chinese ethno state. We don't want to be an imperial power. We don't want to do to Europe. We don't want to dump fentanyl. This is what America accuses China of doing. The reason why there's a fentanyl epidemic is because the Chinese are doing opium war reversal on us. They're dumping it's Americans that are there's drugs that are made all over the world, but the Americans are making, and the American corporations like Sacklers, like DuPont, like Dow Chemical, like the multi-billions of $30 billion the Sacklers made, shoveling 700,000 plus deaths of Americans worth of fentanyl into everyone's mouth and arm, into depressed former coal mining towns in South Carolina, where you can get your job back, your car back, your house back, and your happiness back by taking a little opioids. That's literally the kind of ads that they were putting out there, knowingly causing mass narcotic addiction. Americans, the Westerners, did the opioid wars, forcing narcotics into China. I think they slaughtered mountains of people when China banned the mass import of opium in the 1800s, which Karl Marx even himself is not honest about, by the way. But anyways, and that's why they're hard on it, because they don't want that, because it is very damaging, but the United States is arguing, the Western countries are blaming their own opioid crises on China, the same way that they blame China for their military spending. China made us spend money on military because China is getting successful, and now they made us spend money on our military, and now our troops are mass quitting because of all this terrible strain that we're putting on them. But again, this is just stop blaming China for things that you caused. Also, that's not what they're. Anyway, so we don't want to do opium wars on Europe and America. We would like you all to be healthy. We don't want to, we don't want to have terrible, horrible, terrible wages of. We don't want Greek and British and American people slaving away, on products for terrible wages, without healthcare, without housing, right? We don't want to do to you, we don't want to Shanghai a bunch of white people into China like you did to build our railroads, We can build our own railroads and pay our railroad Uyghur and Han and Hui and other ethnic minorities very good wages. That's how they eliminate, absolute poverty. They have eliminated it. America has absolute poverty. China does not. They are technically poorer, but a purchasing power parity, they've already surpassed the United States. And in absolute dollar terms, they're poor, but they've already eliminated poverty that America still has, that Germany still has, that Britain definitely has, that Greece still has. They are a more successful country than everywhere in the West. 3,800 homeless per million in the United States. It's four in China. 1,000 times less homelessness. It's basically almost negligible. Vietnam, similar numbers. Laos, 0.7. Cuba, it's like several hundred times less. Universal healthcare. They have everybody has guaranteed basic medical care in China. Guaranteed food, guaranteed housing with safe water and electricity. Millions of Americans don't have safe water. Their infrastructure. Your infrastructure? Your infrastructure you don't have that we're talking about? That's why everyone is being poisoned by their water. Not just Flint, thousands of communities across the United States have ancient, anywhere if you have 80 to 100-year-old pipes, and that's like half of America, your water is, and they're not doing anything. Your water quality is not safe. It has lead, it has copper, it has other materials leaching into it. Tens, if not hundreds of millions of people have not safe drinking water. You all count in China, that all counts as poverty. That doesn't count as alleviated poverty. That counts as part of the absolute poverty. But nobody can be honest in the West about that. That half or more of their country lives in poverty in the United States. Just on that metric alone. China has this process. There's this great video by things called it's on Code Pink's YouTube channel called Poverty Alleviation. Number one, income. The Chinese income rate is like $2.30 approximately. The World Bank, it's higher. The World Bank is like dollar something. It's like at least a third higher than the World Bank's official, the West's poverty dollar number per day income. But that's nonsense. That's not what matters. In America, the price of everything goes up $1.90 every single day. The price of wood and houses goes up like $3 a day. You know, of course, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but the price of things and the level of income is not holding with the price of things. Wages can flatline, but that you can actually be dropping in your wages by far if the price of housing, education, and transportation and healthcare go way up, which they all have. They've all gone up like 5, 6, 8 times. So the wages have not flatlined. Wages have plummeted. Like you're 4 to 8 times poorer. That's why all millennials and Gen Z feel 4 to 8 times poorer than their parents. So that the World Bank poverty line is Western barbarous lying and violence through statistics. That's all that is. There is an income. There's one income, 2 assurances, 3 guarantees. The 2 assurances are food and clothing. If you're in China, you are guaranteed you will have food, and it has to be like safe food. Not like red dye filled fucking food desert garbage like indigenous and black people and poor people and brown people disproportionately have. So America, you're already in poverty if you live in a food desert. America has 40 times more malnutrition deaths than Vietnam, 4 times more than Cuba. You're already in poverty. America is already an abject failure just on food. Just on food alone, it's an abject failure. You're in poverty. You don't have safe and secure access to food. Your economy is in poverty. That's why I said one day China's going to come and alleviate all of America's poverty. China, Vietnam, and Cuba are going to come in. Laos and all the other places that start doing what these successful indigenous socialist peoples are doing. They're going to have to come alleviate, because America ain't going to alleviate itself, you know. But that's just one. Number 2, clothing. Most people have clothing in America, so that's not too bad. I mean, a lot of it costs like $200 too much, and it's made in a fucking sweatshop in India. But you know, food, clothing, housing. How many millions of people are being mass evicted as the eviction moratorium? Well, it doesn't expire, but it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if it didn't expire. Thousands and thousands of people are still being evicted anyway, on other reasons, right? The eviction moratorium, there might be millions of more, but I think actually America can't allow the eviction moratorium. This is what the squad that they're coming out, standing on the doorsteps, going, look, 5 little puppets who all take Nancy Pelosi as mommy bear, and they're all like neoliberal sheepdogs for the Democratic Party, standing on the steps, camping out for 2 days. What is this, like a summer camp for neoliberal pet fake progressives? What is this? Ilhan and no, you didn't win anything. It was just that's a actually destructive tactic to make a lot of leftists in America believe that everything's all good now, because 5 totally powerless with no mass movement. You know what Bernie was talking about? We need a mass movement of people behind them. You notice he's not saying anything like that because he wants everyone to forget all of that and just go back to 90s third way collapsar oligarch brainwashed America. They want to get that socialism word out of here, right? And don't look at what Bolivia did, which is an actual successful mass movement and backed indigenous socialist economic and power struggle, not just let's clap for 3 fucking fake progressives. Anyways, so all of this housing moratorium, the reason why America can't really let the housing moratorium expire is because they don't if 10, 20, 30 million people, and it's 10 million now, but it's unclear exactly how many people will soon fall into inability to pay back their rents and their back rents. If that many millions of people suddenly went into eviction, there's not enough court space, there's not enough police to enforce all of these evictions, and also multi-trillions of dollars is of America's neoliberal Ponzi real estate speculation scheme, right? They're still ridiculously overpriced New York City commercial real estate and residential real estate. The spaghetti shops that are, priced at $30,000 per square foot that aren't worth 10, and $10 per square foot. Honolulu, San Francisco, Vancouver, all of this real estate in the Western world, which is where 85% of all printed money goes straight into some kind of residential or commercial real estate. All of that is propped up by an infinite, unpoppable at the largest scale property pyramid scheme, right? And all of that is propped up by infinite central bank money printing, and the tenants. That's part of why you're getting the $600 a week. That's not really a bailout for you. It's a bailout for the landlord. And the rental pyramid scheme that backs up all of the Western world. It's not just America. It's Britain. It's Australia with multi-million-dollar overpriced flats in freaking Sydney. It's ridiculous, right? That's where they store, and that's where they get a cut from the millions of people that they need to buy off. It's called the white and upper classes, and a lot of them are liberal. And some of the conservatives as well. That's how they buy the white oligarchs can buy off 40 or 60 or whatever percent, some percentage of the population to go along with their imperialist, planetary, money printing, a neo-colonial WTO World Bank scheme, right? Is by saying, well, yeah, we're not gonna make anything in America. We're just gonna print money, have unrepayable fucking de-development loans to pillage all the remaining coltan copper and cheap human labor from every country we can. But you're gonna lose your job, but it's okay. You can get a job adjusting insurance for collateralized dying Greek and dying African and dying Texan obligations in New York City. It's okay. Yeah, we're not gonna make anything. We're just gonna be money paper shufflers. And all the Gold Star kids, that song Star Child, all the art school dropouts pushing brands. You can just be a marketing specialist for Coca-Cola. We're not gonna make anything. Just push the Coca-Cola, right? For the global, Giannis called it the global minotaur, the international debt-based neo-colonial scheme. But anyways, you can just you can push Coca-Cola brand. You can be an art school dropout. You wanted to make like anti-capitalist, like leftist, Rage Against the Machine style movies and stuff. Well, we're not going to do any of that. Hollywood only does military-industrial complex propaganda. But what you can do is make new ads for, I don't know, Captain Star Spangled Underpants movies. Make the unwashed ass of Robert Downey, because apparently not washing your ass gets you a Vogue CoverGirl spread for Jared Leto and for Ashton Kutcher. I don't understand this. You can do CoverGirl spreads for Vogue. You can do marketing. You can sell overpriced sweatshop $10,000 handbags for Prada. As an art, you want to do art? That's the only art we're gonna let you do. We're not making anything of value. Not valuable art. The best you can do, you can go to Canada and work on Adbusters or some weird little thing like that. I don't know. If you want to make anything that makes any difference, you want to make a leftist YouTube channel about how Blade Runner is actually a commentary on racial capitalism and colonialism. Well, you can go do that on your own time if you're lucky. See if you can collect $10 with a Patreon with your philosophy degree. Doing any leftisms anywhere in the world, anything of use. No, if you want to do anything with art, you're gonna make magazine spreads for terrible corporations. You're gonna sell more Toyotas and Toyota 4Runners like American Johnson did, making TV spreads and television commercials for GM and Ford. That's what you're gonna sell. That's what you're gonna take all of your art and your talent to do. Oh, you have any kind of Gold Star, the art school dropouts pushing brands, and the Gold Star kids shuffling paper with idle hands. Oh, you got good grades, you're good at math or something, you're a little good with numbers, go get an MBA from Harvard, and all you can do is you can do collateralized debt obligations. You can be a quantitative easing infinity money printer apologist economist like Paul Krugman, like all of Richard Wolff's friends, Janet Yellen. You can go do that in New York or San Francisco or Washington or Toronto. You do that. Make nothing, but just be a professional. Be a member of the new court of Versailles. It's called all the 4 to 8 year degree once were punks, now they're a bunch of military industrial complex drone programmers. You can go program drones. That's what you can do. That's what you can do in America. Program some drones to go kill innocent people in Iraq for oil. As part of our neo-colonial scheme. You want to make something of value? No, absolutely not. You want to program something? You want to make video games of value? No, you can only make AAA garbage cyberpunk games that are all about making billionaires and are transphobic, and make terrible Call of Colonialism games to get more people to sign up for the military. and then airbrush. You're a good writer. Go write BBC articles and New York Times and Washington Post, State Department, imperial stenography, to make more wars, to do more colonialism. Because we don't make anything. We don't make anything of value. We make BBC. London is a high frequency fucking LIBOR rigging scheme for international financial neo-colonialism, and it's an international lie factory for United States military industrial complex. That's what the BBC does. It puts out lies faster than America can, because it has too many liberal arts fucking English degrees, you know, working for writing instead of like writing a great novel about how terrible Britain is, it needs to fucking fall apart and let China take over and do fucking socialism and communism with mutual cooperation and non-capitalism under a principled dialectical materialism based fucking 1.4 billion person actual existing civilization. You know, instead of writing that great novel that British people could, they're too busy writing the fiction called Uyghur concentration. Look at this terrible children suffering in this satellite image of a school that has better water than the Stratford upon Hull, suffering children dying in their fucking poison water school fountains. Britain, why are you taking pictures of functioning preschools and kindergartens that have solar panel factories right next to them that the children can have good wages after they graduate and work on? Why are you taking pictures of nice functioning schools that don't have poison water because there's no poison water in China has eliminated absolute poverty, and that includes clean water? Why are you taking Britain? Why are you taking pictures of that and then photoshopping in a armed guard that looks like some of George Orwell's shitty movies and his shitty book pictures? Because George Orwell is anti-communist. He's like, you know, authoritarian regimes, and one parties are terrible, and that's the most terrible thing in the universe, is if we ever have communist parties ever that order people to, I don't know, fucking wear masks like Britain has to do now. And you know, that's why Britain is going to fall apart, because it can't deal with it's too many people reading its terrible science fiction like 1984 and the Heinlein. Well, that's just Western science fiction, which is also a fascist anti-communist book about how we have to slaughter all the Asian people that are codified as insects, and all the communists have to be murdered, and that's how we'll save the world. And also America won World War II. 75% of French people. This idea, oh, Americans are ahistorical, but the Europeans are much more cultured and historical. They're not. 75% of the French in the 90s believed that America won World War II. It's a lie. The Soviet Union and the Communist Party did all the fighting. Britain's actually similar. So they all lie to themselves. Europe they read a lot more history books, but they read history books of how Britannia's rule was so great. That's why 50+% think that the monarchy and imperialism and colonialism was great and should come back. Because Britain and Europe, while it has history, it has, as Voltaire correctly pointed out, poisonous, illusory, Christian, Western historiography. It has history, but it has bullshit history of themselves as great people. They never were. They were always barbarians. Just like the Sun King that imprisoned and exiled Voltaire, and it quartered and put the heads and legs and arms and entrails on spikes at each edge of the palace at Versailles. The people that were naysayers of all the barbarian oligarchs of Europe, including the Bourbon kings, including the Merovingians, including the houses of Windsor, including all of the things that Game of Thrones were based on, which, as George R.R. Martin said, it's too bad that the last seasons of Game of Thrones were destroyed by Western barbarism in cinema. It's called Hollywood taking over and taking a pretty good book and then turning it into some kind of bizarre, Marvel Cinematic Universe, dragons and giants and fucking zombies with no actual story and progression and believable characters. I don't know why George, why did you let that happen? Anyway, George is like, shit, I tried to make a novel actually elucidating how terrible Europeans actually were to each other, and then they took this novel series made into a successful prestige TV show, and then ruined it all. Nobody wants to listen to it anymore. I like Game of Thrones a lot. Now, the last 2 seasons were not good, but everything before that was very important because it points out how terrible Europe always was. And George is like, Europe, the way that in the War of the Roses, the Europeans this is not, he said, this is not just like the 1300s. This is how they've always been. But these feudal warring houses They were much worse in the actual history than I'm even pointing out in this TV show, where most 90% of the people are dying of terrible plagues because they don't wash their asses or their hands, just like Jared Kushner and Tom Hanks and all the other celebrities coming out saying we don't wash our hands. Just take some potpourri or some $500 hyper expensive, L'Oreal or other perfume that I'm getting money from my feudal Parisian oligarch to shill on the back of, hi, I'm Ashton Kutcher. Hi, I'm Mila Kunis. Hi, I'm Random Hollywood, washed up Imperial Complex, military industrial complex, propaganda making, that's what Hollywood is, celebrity, and I want to shill some shitty ass French Bourbon King descendant garbage cologne on the back of, I don't wash my ass. This is part of why the Europeans don't wash anything, because they're too busy selling capitalist products during feudalism, because there's no difference between the two. It's just, this is part of the lie of Western history. Illusory Western history is there's two separate systems. It's the same fucking system. They were selling expensive perfumes in feudalist France and saying, and lots of people, they're just lazy, but also there's money to be made selling, does your crotch smell like a swamp fell into a skunk's butthole and the skunk butthole exploded with, stink bombs and rotten eggs? Well, don't take a bath. Have fungus and like giardia and like the monster at the end of Akira growing out of your crotch, and then just put a bunch of this $500 perfume all over it. Don't take a bath, just spray Axe like an X over your disgusting teen boy and then go be a MAGA chud to all the girls. Eventually you'll get laid, just keep trying. White, reactionary 17 to 25-year-old men are a prime demographic. That's a good marketing scheme. Like, never get laid, but then keep spraying Axe on yourself, and sooner or later, some young woman or non-binary person that you like will eventually like you if you just keep spraying Axe all over your racist, chuddy, fucking venture bro, CrossFit, gym bro ass. You just keep spraying Axe. Just spend like $25,000 more on Axe. Just keep putting an X. If you make a big enough X, eventually that scent is just gonna break through the SJW, pinko kami feminist, love people of color, whiteness is a problem. It'll break through if you spray enough Axe. Just take Axe, like condense it into like pure form and just like swallow the Axe. Just drink Axe along with hydroxychloroquine and gasoline. Take hydroxychloroquine and Windex, like Donald Trump said, right? You're like, but that's just that they did this to the French, and then the Axe will become part of your DNA. And it'll just be like coming out of every pore, right? And spend like $500,000. Take all of your daddy who owns 25 Airbnbs and has stock in MyPillow.com. Take all that money, buy Axe, and then fucking drink it all. And then eventually you'll get laid by all the women that are supporting the indigenous people. Just keep drinking Axe. But that's a really good. Just imagine you're trying to sell Axe, or imagine you're in 1600s France and everybody smells like shit because they're swimming in feces at the bottom of Flea Bottom, and at Flea Top in the palace, the king is over there with sores all up and down his legs, just putting stockings on, wearing high heels, because gender norms are totally fluid, actually, and then have high heels and having painters like, having people who want to do art in the 1600s, like Mr. And in other European times, like Mr. Michelangelo going, oh my God, what am I having scoliosis feelings in my back? I'm like crunched over doing this ridiculous Sistine Chapel for some, uppity, full of himself Pope. What am I doing? And all the artists over there making shitty 1600 perfume ads for the Bourbon King, going, look at my legs, and they smell so sweet. Paint me, and then throw perfume all over my rotten crotch, so I can sell more fucking stockings and perfume. And if you don't get laid in 1600 or 1700 France, it's not because you should take a bath. You should just buy like $25,000 more worth of overpriced, rose water or whatever I'm selling right now, right? Because capitalism wasn't invented by the Americans and British. They didn't have as much blood dynasty, so capitalism was more, central to their rise. But it's not like the British and the French and the Spanish feudalists and colonialists and the Romans didn't have capital. They weaponized the shit out of that capital. Go read Michael Hudson. David Graeber and Michael Hudson have multiple books about this entire history of oligarchic capital that's always been fused into democracy and the fake democracy that was always feudal oligarchy, and then the feudal oligarchy. Then it's just a bunch of bullshit. The problem with the medieval feudalists is they couldn't figure out how to weaponize money properly like the Greek and the Romans did. But once they did, then they took It took a bunch of international, they call it see, before capitalism, they call it mercantilism. They have all these names for it, but it's the same shit. It's called get all the resources and the money and the power, and then do everything that I possibly can to weaponize this for my personal benefit. You know, whether that's dumping opium and narcotics into China and taking all of the very actually valuable stuff out and then blowing them up with guns and killing them when I can't do it, or if it's, you know, having lots of money, like as Jeffrey Bezos. It's not like Jeff Bezos is the first rich guy who made movies about how the Pinkertons are great with Dwayne The Rock Johnson and Emily Blunt, which is coming out on Amazon, because Amazon works directly with the Pinkertons to break all the legs of their $11 an hour peeing into fucking bottles, oppressed, broken-backed Baby Yoda t-shirt box movers. It's called Amazon fulfillment. Bezos didn't invent that. The Romans are doing that. Every one of these fucking clowns in Europe were doing this. Did it to Greece. Bezos does it to his fucking... Is that it? You know, you're not the only person that suffered under Western barbarism. You know, I'm not saying that not to make it sound like they don't have it bad. You know, it's not oppression Olympics, but I mean, this has been the case. The French were selling these perfumes before Jared Kushner was putting on an expensive boa with blue, red, white, and blue stripes on it and saying, China bad, China, China bad, China, China bad, China bad, China bad, buy my perfume. I don't wash my ass, but China's bad. I don't wash my ass and I cough COVID into my friend's mouth, but China bad. Ashton Kutcher, say China's bad. Here, Mike Pompeo's giving you money. Here, the ruling class is giving you money. Ashton, who's some washed up 90s star that hasn't been canceled yet? Ashton Kutcher, Mila, Keanu Reeves, say China's bad. China's nuking Uyghurs. Tibet Bono Liberation Concert, China opium warned Southern Californian and Southern coal miners to take fentanyl. It's not our fault. It's not the Sacklers' fault. It's China. China stole Elon Musk's rocket ship. That's why they're making bigger and better fucking space stations than us. China forced labor COVID bad market. And then you die of wildfire ash spread Delta variant. Anyways, so like, you know, this has always been the case. And you know, like the reality is that, you know, when you live in a country, you know, I see that I said China bad too many times and then the stream blew up. But anyways, you know, when you have a country and countries, right, that are so duplicitous, right, that don't wash anything, you know, what happens over time? Well, you get pandemics. What happens is people start, when you get to a certain level, and then the difference between the Great Depression was China was in the middle of this, the wisest civilization, the greatest civilization, you know, in the sense of like successful civilization, not the great because, oh, they're just better because we want ethno-state. I'm not saying Silver Spook is part of the Asian Pacific Islander ethno-state that we're building. It's the empire of the Asia Pacific. No. But just successful in like, you know, alleviating the material conditions of people and the spiritual conditions of people as well, I would argue, which comes with that, and environment. China was in the center of in the middle of the throes of the century of humiliation, right? Which is, again, for indigenous peoples, whether they are like me and Nakamisho, Asian and Pacific indigenous peoples like the Native Hawaiians, you know, the Vietnamese, the Chinese, definitely the Anishinaabe, the Sioux, the Lakota, the Blackfoot, and our other brothers and sisters around the world. Whether we don't view things in one human lifespan. You know, people. This is one thing to dig. Even the Westerners who are honest, I don't want to throw them all under the bus. You know, you have your David Graeber, you have your Michael Hudson, you have your Voltaire. You know, you have your. There are empiricists in Greece that spoke against the theoreticians. The Plato was of a branch of thought in Greece, you know, that believed in these Platonic, right, pure theoretical absolute versions of things in the mind, right? And there was another branch that was against that. They were the empiricists. And iatrogenics, the study, Nassim Taleb was Lebanese, but you know, anyways, the Black Swan writer, he wrote that, like, you know, he did a study of how, like, actually for much of history, doctors killed more people than they saved in the West, anyway. And part of that was because of the emphasis, like the fascist Plato, who said we have to slaughter all of these because of this yellow peril narrative, to slaughter and crush all of these Eastern peoples, and also we're constantly fighting each other. The Plato, the fascist, like Heinlein, the fascist, who wrote about great
success by everyone joining the military, slaughtering all the not perfectly eugenically perfect Greeks and Americans in under Heinlein, or space Americans. They believed in this absolute theoretical pure form, the pure form of the chair, the absolute virtue of the purest table, the purest Greek, the purest man, the purest woman, the essence, right? Essentialism, and Plato, and then there was Socrates. There are other people that question this, you know, but then they all got murdered. You know, they all got put, like, kind of like Assange getting put in a deep dark cage for decades for speaking the truth about their sun kings. I'm sorry, for their emperors like Hillary Clinton, right? Who said, can we just send a Reaper drone or a Predator drone over British skies and shoot a Tomahawk missile or a Hellfire missile into the Ecuadorian embassy and kill Julian Assange? Hillary Clinton said that. She laughed afterwards, but she's not joking. She's killed all kind of people, you know, through her wars and other methods. And, you know, that's what they do to people who bring to the forefront the massive slaughter and collateral murder video on Assange, all of the crimes and the problems with the societies. There's never been freedom of speech in the West. It's just a total lie. If you actually speak anything of mass relevance and people listen, and you speak the truth like that, you know, you're gonna go in a deep dark hole and you might just die. You know, if you open your mouth, you know, you say the wrong, you're like the, you know, actual black, you know, movement that can do something. You're like Fred Hampton. They just fucking off you. You know, your heads get flown. There's no such thing as freedom of speech. There's never been freedom of speech anywhere in the West, not in Greece and not in America, not in the two failed, more the democratically flavored versions of Western barbarism. That's why Monticello and the United States Capitol are modeled after Greco-Roman architecture with the fluted columns. It's a very specific act to counteract the British and French feudalists, right? Especially the British, right? Because you have Buckingham Palace. The reason why is to differentiate America. We're so different. They're not different, you know. Just like the Greeks were not so different from the British, but the British, you know, with their monarchy versus their democracy. This is the deep lie, which is that there's tyrannical autocracy and monarchy, and then there's free and democratic democracy. This is bullshit. It's a total lie. There's never been any action. It's not there's a problem with like people collectively governing, but there's never been anything like that anywhere in the Western world. They took out a AK-47, or they took out an AR-15, and with all the fascist patriarchs that were forced to sign up for the military and slaughter innocent people, each other, over ridiculous inter-city state and then yellow peril problems. They took out one of their Persian AR-15s. They took out one of their Greco-Roman AR-15s and blew away all the naysayers. You know, Rome had a Senate. You know, Rome had a Senate. You know, and we knew all the terrible shit that empire did. Oh, it was very democratic. And they also had slaves, you know. See, that's the Americans. That's why the Americans and the Greeks and the Romans very similar, you know. They're closer to each other than they are to Britain, the British or the Spanish monarchies, right? But they're not different in the sense of the European barbarists. You know, they just rule through fake democracy, slavery, a little more. I would say not necessarily more military-industrial complexes. Britain had the empire that ruled the seas, you know. But America's aesthetic is definitely more Roman and Greek, not just in their fluted columns, their armor, their narrative about freedom and democracy, which is a lie. There's never been any. Is closer to the Greek and the Roman. Some of the British and the European feudalists called democracy the Greek joke, but the thing is, it's all a joke. All of the Western world is a joke. And the punchline is coming to fruition. Sadly, it's gallows humor, you know, because you're all hanging yourselves by your COVID and Elon Musk limp dick, right? Because he got it. So, anyways, you're gonna have to figure out what we're gonna do about this. So, anyways, back to Giannis though. I jumped off of Giannis a while back. So the story is when Greece when Giannis Varoufakis specifically said, "Hey, this is not fair. You can't have 67%." going to, you know, this corporation, and we're only keeping 33, you know, That's not fair. You got to help us with our pensions. You got to help us like with our people's problems here. I can't work with this. I can't. I think Giannis's specific words are, I cannot deal with this. I don't want to, this is not fair. And then they went back to the Communist Party of China, an indigenous Asian, actual existing socialist country. And they said, you know what? That's true. Here, you can have 50-50. They say change the split. 50% of the revenue will go to Greece, and we'll take 50. Because we're investing in this. We got to get something from this. It's not fair if we just give you 100, but we'll give you 50-50. Same deal by the way, same deal that China offered to Bolivia for lithium enrichment and excavation plants. Because Bolivia, as Evo pointed out, they didn't have the capacity to do this. China offered 50-50. Actually, 51%. 51% to Bolivia. Germany and the United States, through Elon Musk, will coup whoever we want, they offered 3%. Same, it's very similar. It's like Greece, you guys, they're like the godfathers of the West, right? They're like, oh, the great Western father, look at all these Greek statues. But you treat your own parents, you treat your own uber Westerners, the Greeks, you treat them like shit. That's normal though, because Westerners put their own human parents into terrible, abusive elder care facilities where they get ripped off, stolen from, and abused, and left in their own piles of shit and then die early. So it's normal for Westerners to abuse their parents. So I'm not that surprised by them taking a shit on Greece and causing, 88% increase in suicide rate and drug use and stealing from them blind. That's a normal thing for Westerners, American and Germans, to do. So Greece, and then they said, but no, we'll give you 50%. Also, we'll let you have collective bargaining rights. Also, yes, we will increase the funding for pensions. So he said, I forgot the exact number, but it's basically like, so what did that do? That helped to increase the capacity for Greece to support their own retirement needs for their elders. That helped Greece to, take some revenue to further invest in themselves, in their roads. They got the port built. Germany, EU, and America were not willing to help Greece with that port unless they were going to get all the money from it. And so the Greece, and they weren't building anything. We're too busy pillaging you and turning you into an infrastructureless, portless, roadless, airportless, planeless shithole America. We're too busy practicing on what we're going to do to America right now in 2021 with our $3.5 trillion, but would never happen, fake infrastructure bill that's all going to go straight to the capitalist class, just like all the infrastructure. Even if they didn't call it infrastructure, for Greece, they just let the fuck out of them. Said, well, we're not even going to pretend like we're going to help you. We're just going to take everything you have and we're going to give it straight to Goldman Sachs and to German bankers. We're going to give it to the EU and Brussels, Belgium clowns. We're not even going to pretend. America is pretending like it's going to do shit. It ain't going to do shit for you. It's going to burn you to the ground. Just like it did to Greece. China, I'm going to make this prediction right now. China's not going to come in and invade, but China technically is still maintaining America. 98% of antibiotics, all the medical equipment, China donated tens of millions silently, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions. I don't know the exact number, but millions upon millions upon millions, at least 10 million masks into the United States silently when there were none. They donated them. I know they specifically donated at least hundreds of thousands to Honolulu alone. The sister city, Fuzhou of Honolulu. Nobody, do anybody talk about this? Did you hear CNN, MSNBC, BBC talk about all the free fucking masks that America's first responders, nurses, and doctors got that they would have suffered and possibly died from COVID? You know how many? It was thousands of people died. Frontline essential workers, nurses, doctors, food preparation, delivery, all the drivers, firefighters, all these people would have got sick and died. Millions more would have got sick, and many more would have died if China didn't donate tens of millions of free masks and other PPE. They silently gave it away. They didn't ask for credit. They knew that America wouldn't give them credit because they knew that America and the Western world will never say anything good that the Chinese do, whether that's building Greek ports to concretely develop and build equity between a European country, for a European country, let alone an African country or a Bolivian, South or Central American country. China doesn't ask for any kind of positive reporting in English, French, or Spanish because they know they're never going to get it, because the Western world is full of is run by a bunch of plutocratic little babies. So what? The Chinese aren't going to say that, but I'm going to say that for you. I'm going to say that for them. It's good that they don't say that because we don't want it's unbecoming to say that, and like it would sometimes I wish they would, but at the same time I understand why they can't. But I won't say that for you because West is run by a bunch of clowns and they will never be honest about anything ever. Definitely not American history or Western history or Greek history, Roman history, French or Spanish history, capitalism history. They will never be honest about the Opium Wars and the continued Opium Wars that they wage against their own black and brown people, dumping crack in the ghetto with a bunch of fucking M4A1s so that black people murder each other. All the drug trafficking that the CIA did in the Central South America to fund all of its wars. They will never come clean about any of that. That's why they're banning critical race theory. They ban history that makes America look bad. Like I talked about that last week, I think. They're banning history. They're just banning it. Well, that's bad. Before they could get away with just brainwashing all their teachers to never teach it. But now America has banned critical race theory in 26 plus states. Anything that makes white people or men feel guilt, anything that makes America appear as makes Americans feel guilt for being American is banned. So I'm waiting for them to ban the teaching of the entire history of slavery. They're just going to say America had very hardworking, zero-wage African people. I'm waiting for the history of the books to be replaced with that. In some southern states, they've already erased the history of slavery. And that's fine. Alberta history books have erased their indigenous genocide. They said that indigenous people just like loved holding hands and then they just disappeared. And they're all gone now. So that's the way that the Westerners teach history. There's never been any history in Europe. Not really. They can't. No one would want to be British if they knew what the British Empire was. No one would want to be French if they knew what the French history was. They're a bunch of liars. That's why they took George R.R. Martin's actual attempt to tell true history of Europe in an honest way. That's not even close to as honest as it needs to be. And they said, fuck this show. We're going to make it into a horrible Hollywood spectacle and make everybody hate this fucking show. And that's not literally what they said. But it's sad that everybody hates Game of Thrones. Because, and also nobody really takes that lesson, which is that Europe is a fucking shithole. And it always was. And no, it wasn't cute little nice holding hands feudal. No, it was always a disgusting fucking shithole where nobody washed anything and you died of black plagues because you don't wash anything. Just like you're dying of COVID plague because you don't wash anything and you don't believe in basic science and basic hygiene. And that's part of why China and Vietnam have thousands of times less cases than you. Even though Vietnam doesn't have vaccines, they're still doing much better, even without the vaccines. And despite Delta, they're having a hard time now. They're still doing better than America. Without the vaccines, 50 times poorer because they're not ascientific, disgusting fucking people. So anyway, but that's my job is to give you a little bit of truth. Just a little bit. Anyways, so what did China do? So China did right by Greece, and the Greeks that are the oligarchs will never be honest about that because they're too busy trying to get more money from Brussels and the United States to do their bidding under neo-colonialism of their own fucking people, The African, the socialist politicians, there's some in Africa that are saying, China builds concrete roads, Western aid, they've given us multi-hundreds of billions of dollars of aid, and they've taken 152 trillion and 600 million people were plunged into poverty in the height of American and Western aid from the EU, from the WTO, from the World Bank, the IMF, and all of these NGOs, and Bono doing concerts, and Toto singing a song about, blessing the rain in Africa. And you know what that's done for us? Nothing. 600 million plunged into poverty in a time. Every country that's ever taken Western aid, as Richard Wolff, again, you have a handful of honest people in the West. You have Richard Wolff, you have like a Chris Hedges, you've got like a Voltaire, you got like a, you got a couple, you got a David Graeber, you got a hand, and what do these people get? They get sidelined, they get laughed at, they get ostracized, they lose their ability to be journalists at major publications because there's never been any free press in America. You like Chris Hedges for saying the Iraq War is a waste of money and time and it's destructive and horrible and it's a war for profit and oil. What happened? Lost his job at so-called news, the so-called, I thought you needed an educated populace to have a democracy. No, apparently, no, but we can't, the West can't reconcile with that. And that's not like a liberal so-called left. The right calls that a left organization, right? There's no left in the West. So, Voltaire got exiled. Richard Wolff gave lectures to
empty Harvard and Princeton auditoriums with 2 people. But that that should say more not about Richard Wolff and how boring he is. No, he's very entertaining and very honest. It should say more about what is wrong with your entire so-called intellectual the intellectual life. What's wrong with your so-called society? You have 2 people listening to the one person saying actually true things. What's wrong with a society that takes the one journalist trying to like report honestly about your foreign policy, and then you take him and you hang him out to dry? What does it say about a country that takes the one guy saying the true thing about the problem of France, and then he gets fucking thrown into the stocks in the pillory? He's like, what's wrong with this entire civilization? You guys are full of lies and you're terrible. And then every truth sayer in the West gets put into poverty, gets pushed out of their job, gets sidelined, gets thrown into the back, has to like survive on Patreon. Please fund me, go save me. Oh my God, like Danny Haifong trying to do journalism today, right? Danny Haifong is doing the actual work of like doing the true journalism to avoid catastrophic attempted war with China. And what does he get? Please fucking fund me on Patreon. He should be getting the 6-figure salary to do actual journalism, but to this day, the entire Western world, BBC does not hire German journalists. They're friends of Daniel Dumbrell, very important YouTube. You want to learn more specifically about China? Daniel Dumbrell, very important YouTube channel. Latin American, Latinx person from Canada, now in China, lived in China for over a decade. Family's Chinese. Very important YouTube channel, right? He had a friend that's a German journalist, right? German in China, right? In Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen. He's been all over the country. He's been to see the poverty alleviation, the great successes of 850 million people lifted out of poverty, 1.4 billion out of absolute poverty, doing better, 1,000 times less homelessness than America, right? German journalist, but constantly writing negative stories about China. Oh, China has forced labor. China has a poverty problem. China's floods are catastrophic, and they did terrible. The recent I forgot the province. The recent floods, the 1,000-year floods, they did terrible. When they actually did much better than America. Germany and Austria had thousands of people dying, and they totally dropped the ball, saving their own Austrian and German people. Right? In the so-called advanced social democracy, it's not. It's a little bit better than America, but mostly that's because the Soviet Union was right next, and half of Germany was freaking Soviet. But it's still not doing as good as China. And so they said, but this German journalist is constantly putting out negative China articles. Article about Uyghur forced labor camp. Even though the person has been to the solar panel manufacturing plants, most of it's AI, and the people that work there are being paid reasonable wages, and they all have. Uyghurs in forced labor have better livelihoods than the average American. The Uyghurs all have access to a house with clean running water and guaranteed electricity and guaranteed clean water. Every one of these Uyghurs that were working in the solar forced labor camps, they all have guaranteed basic health care. They all have guaranteed food and clothing. Unlike Americans, who have 40 times more malnutrition deaths than Vietnam and many times more than China. I forget, there was some wild, American Johnson got some wild statistics about China. It's actually like way worse. It's like 1,000 times more malnutrition deaths. I think it's 1,000 times more homelessness than China. It's something like, because China has less per capita homelessness than Vietnam, and Vietnam has like way less than America. It's like off the charts, ridiculous. Not even close. It is not even close. How much better the actual life of the average person, Uyghur, Hui, or otherwise. Despite their poverty, despite their on paper making less per capita, I think it's like 4 times less per capita wages, they're like doing way better than any American. That's why American teachers that were like rationing out cans of tuna fish, teaching for terrible salaries, no healthcare, they moved into China. When they figured out, oh my God, I can teach in China and like have a house and have like healthcare, and it's like free. It's like you get access to it. You get like food that isn't fucking poison, because I'm having to buy shitty ramen and make my ramen with like water that comes out of a boil water advisory, fucking fracking and lead and copper filled pipe. Holy shit, I'm moving to China and teaching and having a dignified life.
white American teachers. They don't. Does America tell you about all the teachers that have flocked by the thousands to China? No. Do they tell you about the thousands of Boeing and other aircraft engineers and advanced adversarial MAS programming software developers that have, and also technicians, former U.S. military technicians that have fled, who worked on aircraft, who worked on F-16s, who worked on 737s? Does America tell you about all of the Westerners that have fled to make aircraft and trains and other advanced technology in China? They don't tell you that. They don't tell you that because they can never tell the truth. Just like they could it in Voltaire's time, just like Socrates could it in his time, just like Richard Wolff can in his time, just like Chris Hedges could it in his time, just like Danny Haiphong can in his time, just like all these people, just like the whistleblower blowing the whistle that 90% of Obama's drone strikes murdered innocent civilians, just like he can in his time, going to prison for just saying basic truths that people need to hear. You go to fuck, you just like the same, basically saying that what happened to Voltaire when he said, hey, you know what? This ancient 3,500-year-old great civilization, the wisest civilization, wisest nation, reduced to a natural religion, not with this theoretical pie in the sky Christian, Christian pinhead dancing on age-old justifications for divine oligarch kings and civilizing mission. They use that same justification to destroy internally their Protestant Huguenots. So they've been practicing this internally, and then they took that missions and brought them in missionaries to crush and commit genocide and steal the land of indigenous peoples around the world. And just as, Voltaire just said the true things, and then he went into prison or into exile. And so, in the same way, saying, hey, you know what? We made terrible mistakes, and you need to know about this, that your U.S. military is murdering 9 times more innocent people, and it doesn't care. Under a black Democrat, it did that. And you need to know that. And what happens when you say true things in the West? You see, when you say true things in China, you know what happens? Even if you say true things and you're a white person in Europe, like Giannis, you say, hey, this is not fair. You can't rip us off like this. You know what China does? They fucking fix it. You say, hey, you know what, China? We have all these billionaires. You know what they do? They chop off 15 of their heads. They executed 15 billionaires. Also, they routinely mass arrest hundreds of executives at financial and big tech corporations. You know what they do? They ban mass high finance capital investment. That's why all of the West right now is very pissed off. They're like, oh, fuck, we can't just make billions of dollars having Uber. And they know that there's problems. They're like, oh, my goodness. They had a Communist Party official work like a 12-hour day doing Uberized, a gig economy delivering and going, this is terrible. This is terrible. What happens when you tell the truth about the abuses of the more reactionary Shanghai, the parts that are interfacing directly with the Western barbarous capitalist world? What happens when you tell the truth about the abuses of the Ubers and the Deliveroos and the Amazons of China in China? What do the Chinese put you in prison like they did to Daniel Hale? Is that what they do? Do the Chinese like put you into the stocks? Do they put you in a little tower where they wind out people's intestines, right? Like Voltaire's Montesquieu's did. Do they do that? Do the Chinese put you in prison like they did to Assange for telling the truth? No, you know what they do? They fix the fucking problem. You know why? Because they're an actual civilization. They fix the problem. It's impossible to imagine. I know it's impossible. I was telling Holly about this. I can't imagine what it's like to have a government and a people that you don't have to debate whether like black and brown people are human beings, and a government that doesn't like literally try to fuck you over for oligarchs every second of the day, either whether that's by forking over all your post offices, roads, and healthcare to billionaires, or bosses, right? And can you imagine a society that actually improves people's lives, like massively, without colonialism and by the greatest scales in the history? Imagine, like, I try to imagine what it would be like if I would, like, as a social worker and a STEM teacher in the ghetto, working with all these impoverished kids, Honduran asylum seekers. I always talk about, right, Neofeud, what Neofeud's about. black and brown and indigenous kids, Native Hawaiians living 22 a house, eating spoonfuls of peanut butter for dinner like me, ramen and spam every night, right? Imagine if all the kids in Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders in downtown Kalihi in Honolulu, Hawaii, the not so nice side of the coconut trees, all the thousands of kids that I work with, I try to imagine how proud would I be of my America or Hawaii or whatever country it was. Doesn't matter what government and what country. If all those kids 20 years later are like inventing rocket ships, engineered for solar panels, having huge, nice new 3-bedroom houses on, like building and maintaining 50,000 kilometers of electrical grid. All of my ghetto that I'm from had poverty actually alleviated, and the new generation of kids that I helped, I could say, hey, you know what? When I taught that kid how to read at the age of 10, because the public school of America wasn't going to teach them how to read. Hey, when I went and stopped that kid from joining that Bloods and Crips to go fucking pop a bunch of Kanye West bullshit and got them into STEM and got them into getting a degree in electrical engineering or into renewable technology. That Samoan kid that would have joined the military and now they're doing STEM technology, and now they're actually, I would feel so proud to be part of the new Hawaii where we're not doing military, where we have Hawaiians and Polynesians and white and Asian and all peoples working together that used to be in poverty, now with like green technology, nice houses, clean electrical grid, roads with no potholes, bridges not falling apart. Now we have a beautiful green Hawaii prospering without military, without exploitative real estate everywhere, and everyone in healthy, happy households, inventing cures for cancer, like Native Hawaiians inventing cures for cancer, working on actual sustainable colonies and the moon and on Mars, and like in a sustainable way. And I would feel so proud to be a part of that project. Imagine wherever you're from, things getting amazingly better because of the work that you did. I would be like, oh my God, I am so proud to be a part of this. I would love to be a part of this. And my kids and everyone else would be like, oh my God, I love this government. I love this country. I love this people. I love all of us together so much because we've done such great work. Every one of us have done work. All of us poverty alleviators, all of us social workers, all of us teachers, all of us engineers, even in the office, all of us that worked against the colonial WTO loans. We've all done such an amazing job to alleviate 1.4 billion people, more than any time in the history of the human race, from poverty, and leading in renewable technology. I will be so proud because 1/2 of all renewable technology, electric batteries, solar farms, you name it, electric buses and electric dump trucks. You talk about high-speed rail, you talk about mass transit, they lead in every single category. Dealing with COVID-19, crushing this virus, 70,000 people going into one city in China to alleviate the COVID-19 eruptions. You would be like sign me up to be part of this amazing project and see the material benefits that we have all done. And I look at, that's why they have a 98% approval. It's impossible to imagine because the Western world has never had that. It had the very slightest taste of it for cis, straight, white men in the 1950s and a little bit of SOCDEM Europe, but it wasn't equally shared. It was a lot less than anything that China's ever had. And nobody is proud because at the end of the day, all of the European and American benefits were based on international colonialism. So somewhere, I'm doing better as a 1.5 kid having American with a Thunderbird under my Fordist 1950s version of capitalism, which is still capitalism. And I'm doing a little better, but black people are still, back into, they're still second-class citizens. Women are still second-class citizens. And women actually got 100. They all got equal property as it was redistributed in the Maoist, the era of Mao in Vietnam. Same thing. So the West has had little tastes of what it's actually like to have a functioning human civilization, but never have they ever had anything like what China has had and has today. And just try to imagine yourself, not in a decrepit, backwards, barbaristic shithole like America, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, that's fucking you over for its capitalist class. The people are ascientific and idiots, right? Don't wear masks. You have huge anti-mask rallies and anti-vax rallies in Paris, in Germany. Imagine being surrounded by, imagine when you say the word anti-vaccine, everyone in the country is like, what does it mean to be anti-vaccine? That's what China does. You don't have that problem. Imagine to say, hey, everyone deserves the rights to have a dignified life, whatever color, and racism is a problem. Imagine being able to say that anywhere in a country and nobody bats an eye because that's just accepted reality. In America and in Europe, you still have the fascism everywhere. You have half of the people like, whiteness isn't a problem, there's no racism, is over, blah, 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 blah. They don't have debates like that in China. They have debates. They have discussions. They talk about things. But they don't discuss like whether like people that have a skin tone darker than caramel, cinnamon chai dolce latte deserve to exist. They don't have those kind of discussions. They don't debate and discuss whether vaccines are gonna kill the world, and they don't have to like bribe people with $500 or force fire department heads and nurses and doctors who refuse. And one German nurse injected 8,000 saline solutions when she was supposed to be injecting vaccines, COVID-19, because Germany, right? The better one, right? Because they're very SOCDEM and they're very progressive in certain respects, yes, but they're injecting. They have the same disinformation running their country as well, and they are a little bit more better educated than the West, partially because half of their country was fucking communist. But anyways, but not enough of it, obviously. You know, Germany had a little bit of the yellow, not peril, the yellow salvation. You know, they had a little injection of the yellow salvation. You know. And then they had, that's too much. Let's put Nazis in charge and have the Deutsche Bank and BMW CEOs still be multi-10 billionaires today. The richest people in Germany are the descendants of Nazis. BMW brother and sister heads are I think 20, they were like 40 billionaires when you put their two fortunes together. Descendants of Nazis, Deutsche Bank. A lot of the Merkel's cabinet is like literal fucking Nazis. And that's why the Alternative for Deutschland took off. Is because they do a good job trying to pretend like there's no Nazis in Germany, but it's full of it. They're full of it. They just put masks on. It's called the Democratic Party. Anyways, so when you know, like imagine having everyone in your neighborhood amazed, not just better off, like leaps and bounds better off. Imagine the nurses in San Francisco who are ODing presently on opioids and shooting up because because doctors and teachers and nurses have to pay their own substitute teacher if they want to take a day off to go to hyper expensive chemotherapy they can barely afford, right? Imagine if all those people that are being evicted, right, who are descendants of people who are boomers and Gen X who had houses, imagine if every one of those people was now living in a beautiful new 3-bedroom brand new house with clean water. Imagine every American with guaranteed 100% clean water. Imagine like everyone that you work with, right, as a teacher, growing up, like me, I was a teacher, right? Growing up and then getting great jobs, building amazing new technologies to liberate more of the world from poverty, to deal with the real war against climate change. Imagine if everyone around you was amazingly successful and then your government helped that. Imagine the government doing anything that wasn't for billionaires, you know? Like taking black people, throwing them in prison, and then making 50 cents an hour a license plate for Andrew Cuomo and 25 cents an hour firefighting for California, and making all of the NVIDIA chips and Whole Foods vegan and non-vegan cheese. Imagine if all those black people who are actually doing forced labor, 2.5 million disproportionately black in America, were all living amazingly great lives now. They're like black who would have been prisoners, like doing what the Hidden Figures are doing, but not hidden. Imagine the Hidden Figures not being hidden. Can you imagine that? You can't imagine that because you live in a shithole country. You live in a shithole fake civilization called the Western world that's never been able to speak the truth ever about itself, ever, at scale. Everyone in the history for the last 2,000 years who has ever said anything absolutely necessary and true has been executed, imprisoned, silenced, assassinated, character assassinated, sometimes both, career assassinated, deported, exiled, put in the stocks, forced to self-suicide, Socrates, Voltaire. There has never been any truth. There has never been any freedom ever in the Western world. Every attempt, everything that looks good was papered over. It was like this, the rotten crotch of a bourbon king with pustules and sores and a bunch of expensive linen and a bunch of perfume, overpriced perfume dumped over that rotten crotch. everything about democracy, freedom, justice, and all of these rules-based order, all of this, from the Greeks on to the Americans, it's all been bullshit. It's all been papering over a rotten, disgusting, COVID-filled crotch that hasn't been watched in 2,000 years. You know, you don't watch something for 2,000 years. You know, you can evolve some unique new life forms like Neofeudalism. And then there's other places, you know, and like there was a recent article that says like yes, the other countries, they're not perfect countries. Again, like China, Vietnam, Cuba, Laos, these are not perfect countries either. But like, if you do not start with like, they have been amazingly on the total widest big picture scales, amazingly successful, and should be celebrated. Every American newspaper, if they were honest, CNN, MSNBC should be crying from wall to wall the successes of the Chinese Communist Party, the Communist Party of China. They should be celebrating the largest. This is what I really wanted to talk about. This is why I said we're gonna be okay. You know, to get back onto this track. This is why we're gonna be okay. You know why? Because the Chinese are celebrating the world's largest solar-powered green hydrogen plant operating in China. You know, in the same IPCC, why are they screaming about how terrible everything is? Why aren't they celebrating the greatest successes in combating climate change in the history of humanity? Baofeng Energy, 200 megawatt solar plant in northwest China's Ningxia autonomous region to electrolyze water to make green hydrogen, replacing coal. This one plant, $1.4 billion solar-powered electrolysis project designed to produce 160 million cubic centimeters of hydrogen each year, is 250,000 tons of coal worth of consumption. You know, you talk about dealing with climate change. Coal is one of the biggest forms of climate emission for electric generation. This is going to replace, and I did the calculation. It's like, in the U.S., it's tens of millions of tons of coal, but this is one plant. It's about 1% of America's coal energy. Let me look at U.S. coal energy consumption. You know, 477 million short tons were consumed in the U.S. You know, but I think just for electricity, it's for electricity alone, it's like, I think it was like 70 million, but I could be off. But anyway, this is just one plant, right? This is the first of many plants to come, right? And it's the biggest solar plant in that's not the biggest. China has a bigger just solar plant, but this is the biggest solar powered green hydrogen plant, right? You add up all the solar energy, they'd have like half of all the solar energy. You know where it's coming from? Xinjiang. So when you talk about Uyghurs and the forced labor, they're actually stopping the development of solar technology that also helps develop Uyghur jobs and Uyghur life expectancy. The Uyghur, you don't need to worry about Uyghurs, okay? You gotta stop crying about Uyghurs. What every Western CNN, MSNBC, and YouTuber, fake left tuber, like all these fucking Fed tubers and VoshTube and Destiny Tube and all these clowns, I don't know, and I don't really care what they're saying. It's nonsense and useless. I do know too much that they're all standing the CIA nowadays. Every Democracy Now!, every BBC, every Australian, all these climate change, Extinction Rebellion, all of these Canadian CBC should be blasting from the mountaintops the amazing successes that one country with like less than 1/5 of the Earth's population that's doing half or more of the world's regreening renewable energy while also alleviating poverty at the same time. The fact that nobody is talking about that in the West that is already the nail in, that is like all of the nails that you need for all the coffins that America needs to bury all of its dying citizens. That's all the nails that you need to show that the West has no intellectual honesty anywhere in it. Why are you not screaming about this in the mountaintop? You know why? Because the West is too busy trying to give the #1 carbon consumer, the United States military industrial complex, along with all of the capitalist corporations that do 70% of the carbon emissions headquartered in Wall Street in America, BBC, Australia, Canada, Germany. The German journalists they said, Dan, I can't write anything positive about China. The reason why? German government and German news organizations will not publish anything positive about China. I can only give them negative stories. There is zero intellectual honesty anywhere in the Western world. And when you are honest, you will be put in the fucking pillory. Figuratively, literally, economically. And that's not the hope. But the actual hope is that China, despite the West's attempt, it already has every Western corporation, every Australia, Britain, EU, every one of these countries, the United States, the biggest trading partner is all China. They cannot, the Chinese have nuclear submarines that are silent diesel, more advanced than American submarines, that can fire 25 warheads and to blow up every American city if they attempted to start an actual war with them. The ASEAN countries, Vietnam, Laos, Philippines, these are all uniting behind China. Or they're uniting to say, we're not going to take sides. We're not gonna choose sides. You can send Kamala Harris to build back better, or America's back with Agent Orange and fucking Tomahawk missiles and AC-130s to gun us down in our villages. We don't want you back. We don't want you back. Get the fuck out of here. America has propaganda in America saying Vietnamese love us now. They don't love you now. They don't love you now. That's why Luna Oil is being attacked and berated in Western social media like Twitter and on YouTube. And so much so that Luna Oi, very important Vietnamese voice for idiot clown cultures like the entire Western world, you know. But the reason why you don't hear about that, you only hear about oh, Vietnam is gonna help us to make war on China. I mean, save Uyghurs, is because every Western country, from Germany, the greatest powers in Germany, to Britain, to France, to the United States, to Canada, and even Sweden, Finland, Norway is not, the military is opening up big time because they want to start have U.S. aircraft carriers doing limited and drone strike Arctic wars. That's why Battlefield 2042 deals with Arctic warfare. Battlefield 2042 is what the future that the West wants. It's just called forever war that makes more climate change because the military-industrial complex and guns and bombs and warships put out all the fucking climate change to make more resource wars, to make more climate change, to make more resource wars, to make more climate change, to make more. That future won't happen. Do you know why it won't happen? It's because the United States empire is the final death throes of the Western world is thrusting at windmills. They will not get this war started because people are getting too smart. The African people, Bolivia, Evo Morales is out there going like, fuck, I ain't fucking with the United States anymore. The only idiots who still read the BBC and the New York Times, these disgusting rags, are a bunch of sad dying clowns of COVID in Europe and America. They don't make anything. They don't produce anything. They can't even get... You can't get the Tomahawk missiles over bridges because they're too busy collapsing in America. And then your military bases, which, here's a fun fact, military bases are fucking collapsing. This is another thing they're not going to tell you. They're so fucking hollowed themselves out with neo-feudal plutocracy. American military bases in Hickam Air Force Base, Hawaii. I know these specifically. Pearl Harbor, Wheeler. You know this Grand America's gas station in the Death Star of the Pacific called Indo-Pacific Command in Hawaii. Air Force Base naval officers and soldiers and the people on the USS John F. Kennedy, when they come back, their wives and their kids are like living in rat-infested, bed-bug-infested, falling apart houses with holes in the roofs. Do you know why? Because they gave it to Australian subcontractors who work with Rupert Murdoch to take a bunch of central bank printed money to not build military housing. You know, the aircraft carriers, they're not doing as well as they... It costs $10 billion to make one United States aircraft carrier. $100,000 hypersonic Chinese Type Dong missile can take out an aircraft carrier. You're thrusting at windmills. You're not going to win a war with China. You're definitely not going to win a trade war with China. You already lost it, you idiots. It's hurt America 10 times more than you thought that they would. And this is what your genius CIA and your think tank Rumsfeld, global chessboard game war gamers, and they can't figure this shit out. You know, Biden is not much better than Trump. You will not win a war against China. This is like, this is the, and you will not be able to fight one because as soon as you start, all your rusted aircraft carriers will be fucking sunk into the bottom of the sea, and they're building too many fucking solar panel factories too fast. They're alleviating too much poverty in and outside of China for the West to ever succeed. So the people that buy this shit are the people that are still professing undying fealty to their corporate. Quit your corporation. Quit the United States government. Quit the United States military and police. These are all failing institutions that will give you a little bit of money now, and then they'll make your home out of twigs and COVID-19 fucking unused test strips because nobody wants to get tested, and unused COVID-19 vaccines because still America can't fucking vaccinate enough of its population to not let 200,000 cases happen today. Oh, that's right. We're going to do 2020 again. And it's going to be worse this year. This is the worst wave of COVID-19, by the way. Fauci and the international scientific community is like, this will be the worst wave. You thought winter was bad? This is the worst wave. And we're not even done going through the Greek alphabet one time with variants. This is the beginning, and you already blew all of your load. You don't have any more fucking money. Your inflation rate on your Twinkies and your Pop-Tarts and your wood is like fucking like 5, 10, 20%. They bury all the inflation that's actually in housing, healthcare, and education. If you count that, inflation is like 20, 30%. But we're not gonna touch that. But even in your basic food, toilet paper, Lysol, that shit's all going up. America cannot do anything but print money because America will not build anything because America is a collapsing plutocrat, neo-feudal era spectrum shithole. My phone is ringing. I think Holly has to possibly answer this. So you know. But long story short, sorry, my phone just started ringing and then interrupted my thought. It's kind of I think it might be something kind of important, but we will, you know, the thing is we're gonna be the United States will fall apart further. They will not win and fight any wars. You know, it was looking like it. They might try to fight some wars. I don't think that there's you see, there's too many sane people, you know, like Colonel Wilkerson. There's too many people that like don't actually want all of their people to die in nuclear holocaust. So I still worry about that. The nuclear option is like one of the only ones that they could pull off, but I don't think they're going to be able to pull it off. You know, I think that, you know, what's going to happen is America is not going to fight anything. It's going to rot and die. The indigenous people of Turtle Island, well, Chinese will come and feed. Well, there'll be Chinese, like, you know, in Jericho, there'll be Chinese airdrops of food to people that are starving with the 40 times more malnutrition deaths in America than they have in Vietnam. 35 minutes? Okay, we're going to get out very soon. So that, and then China will build hospitals. They'll build houses that are clean with clean water. They'll rebuild all of America's infrastructure. For a very low cost, 51%. America, you'll be able to take 51% of the revenue from the new Chinese homes and roads that they're going to build for you, like they did for Greece, like they did for Bolivia, like they're doing for Africa. America is de-developing itself into a collapsed sub-Saharan shithole like America did to Africa. Chinese will do for America what they did for Greece and Africa and South America when America stops kind of just settles down a little bit. And then it's not gonna ask for all of your money, and you're not gonna go be working in an Indian sweatshop style American slave pit for the Chinese. The Chinese will liberate the black prison slaves. They'll build infrastructure, and the money from the infrastructure that the Chinese helped America build, rebuilding its fallen apart ports. When Chinese build the bridges that Biden takes all the money that was supposed to build them and gives them to the oligarch class to try to get this Mars, and not build bridges and smoke it and buy another 25 yachts. When the Chinese build the actual American bridges between Cincinnati and Minneapolis, when the Chinese build the highways across America with very reasonable loans, and then maybe they'll give you a gift like they did to Cuba. For all of the indigenous new civilizations that will arise, the federated indigenous autonomous regions like the Uyghurs, there will be Anishinaabe that live out of poverty with no boil water advisories like the Anishinaabe. Millions of indigenous people live in boil water advisories. Everyone in China does it, no matter their minority. There will be millions of Anishinaabe and black and brown and poor white people that have no boil water advisories and no toxic water, with no fracking and no lead and no copper. All of Flint, the Flint will get a 50% deal. Flint, we're gonna rebuild your water infrastructure. We're gonna invest the expensive money that Governor has been auctioning off all of your infrastructure to Nestle so that they can sell $10 privatized water back to all your starving, dying, rash-covered infants and 7-year-olds that can't remember the alphabet after the letter F when they learned it a year before because America has been poisoning your children with lead. And China, we are so sorry. No, the Chinese are like, we're so sorry, Flint people. We're so sorry, Pennsylvania, that America has let you down. There's no America anymore. It's the indigenous people of the Lakota and the Sioux that are living on what used to be, I forget which one's under Pennsylvania, but there's new people that would be under Pennsylvania. And their federation that is multiracial, just like every other, you know, China and Vietnam don't kick American Johnson out. They don't kick out white, even racist journalists in the country, you know, unless they get super bad and they commit terrible crimes. But, America will have trillions of dollars of Chinese and Vietnamese, but mostly Chinese because they have all the money, investment into America's infrastructure that will build actual bridges. And then the peoples in America that are the new indigenous federation of solar power engineers, with all the money, they say, we're not just gonna build you a road and a new pipe for the Flint people. We're gonna build new schools, and we're gonna have good education with true history for all of the black kids in Flint and the white kids in Flint, and all of the black kids in Detroit and the white kids in Detroit and in Oakland. And all those Flint kids will design even more advanced solar powered water purification systems that self-empower the kids of Flint. Not dump in a bunch of aid like it's an African country that America is trying to disabuse of its wealth. That's what America does to ghettos inside and the ghettos outside. But China is going to do what it does to its ghettos inside and its ghettos outside, which is alleviate actual poverty. And then it'll build a new hospital system for America. And it'll let the peoples, the Federation of Indigenous Socialist Civilizations of America with white participants, will be able to benefit from 51% of the wealth of all of that investment. And then maybe they'll get free gifts like China did 10 billion of gifts to Cuba for building roads, for building in telecommunications infrastructure, for giving them satellites. $1 billion satellite launched for Bolivia. $1 billion satellite launched for Gaddafi's Libya, for the African Monetary Fund to liberate Africa with concrete development instead of Western aid pillaging, right? Until America, what did they do? Oh, that's right. With France and America went in and bombed Libya into the Stone Age. Push them back into slave markets and starvation. That's what they did. That's right. But they won't be able to do that anymore because America will be dead along with France, France will be begging for China to build its falling apart Parisian roads between, I can't get to Pigalle because my road's full of potholes. Oh no, everyone's dying of COVID. China will come in and get you all of the education and the COVID vaccines that you need because you're too busy fucking slaughtering each other in the streets, fighting over a baguette. Fighting over whether we should lock down again or whether government authority. France is a failed civilization, and then they will need Chinese infrastructure. They actually already getting it, by the way, to some extent. The Greek and Italian port recently built. The Italians are changing their tune. You notice that Italians came out with a research paper that said actually every report of Uyghur genocide and forced labor and all these ethnic genocide and ethnic oppression of the Uyghur were all fabricated for Western imperial interests. To propagate animosity of the masses of their population towards China, to foment trade, hybrid wars against them. You know why? Because the Italians are going, holy shit, maybe this is what we have to do because we can't do it ourselves and we're falling the fuck apart. Like the Greeks. Giannis is like, why are we not working with China? Why are we lying about China? Because there are some parts of the world that are figuring out the actual path to the actual future. And they're the ones that are capable of telling the truth, at least sometimes. There are some Germans that can, not the German journalists for the Germany news, not Angela Merkel, but there are some people in Germany that are like, hey, you know what we got to do is we gotta stop pretending like we're gonna solve our problems, and we gotta start working with China over there, and not just like when we're making money, but we gotta work with them generally because that's how we're gonna get out of this shithole because they're the ones that can alleviate poverty. Because we don't do it because we Germans are not valid. We crushed Namibia and we crushed Greece and we work with the United States to crush the Portugal, Ireland, and Greece and Spain. We're doing a little better than America, but we're actually still colonizers and we haven't figured out how to not be shitty. Like we didn't get enough yellow salvation to not be shitty Germans anymore. We had East Germany, we had vision and dental, and the Soviet Union made a lot of mistakes. China's making a lot less of those mistakes. China doesn't make zero mistakes, they make a lot less mistakes. And and so that's how it will go. And and that's why it's gonna be okay. And the Chinese are not gonna make you speak Chinese like Americans made Hawaiians banned our language and forced us to speak English and salute the flag here in Hawaii. And they forced black people and indigenous people to speak English, just like Canada's residential schools and America's boarding schools. And they killed the Indian, saved the man, and slaughtered everyone who didn't want to stand up and salute the flag and fight for America's military and say we're the greatest country in the world. China is not going to make you say they're the greatest country in the world. They don't do that. They're not going to do that. All they're going to do is just please mutually cooperate with each other, and please just, I hope you guys do better. They're not gonna invade with gunboats, with gunboat diplomacy like America came here, like America came to every other country and Britain came to every other country. They're not gonna land on Britain shores. Chinese aircraft carriers with Taipodong hypersonic missiles are not gonna come up the River Thames, point missile launchers at Buckingham Palace and at the Capitol and the City of London HSBC Bank Tower. China's not gonna shoot
threaten with missiles like Britain is doing to Ukraine and in the South China Sea. China's not going to come in and aim missiles at your capital in your hellscape fucking Cthulhu, America birthing Britain. And they're going to say, China, you're going to speak Chinese. China, Britain, you're going to give us everything of value that you have. What do you have? Give us everything in Buckingham Palace. Like you took everything from the Summer Palace. More than all the greatest works of every cathedral and museum from Italy to Germany to Britain to Versailles. Everything all of greatest works of art, history, literature, and jewelry and great valuables and sculptures. Everything in Europe was not 1/10 of what was in one palace, the Summer Palace of China, the greatest civilization. Victor Hugo. We're not gonna do what you did to us. Less than 2 centuries ago, France and Britain. We're not gonna fly up along Paris and aim missiles at your Eiffel Tower and your sad Notre Dame that's burning down again because you can't fucking keep your goddamn public infrastructure up. We're not gonna aim missiles. We don't want your Eiffel Tower. We don't want your French crown jewels. We don't want your British crown jewels. We don't want all your dead war criminal Prince Philip Nazis and all your queens and all your colonialist terrible people. I don't want paintings of Queen Victoria. We don't want your art. And we're not going to say that your art is full of disgusting, horrible people and it's all symbols of monarchism and colonialism. We don't want your wealth. We don't want all your worthless money printed bank paper spewing out of the windows of HSBC, City of London Towers. We don't want all of your propaganda that you do for America. All of this BBC Uyghur genocide lies about us. That's the only thing you produce in Britain. We don't want any of that. It's not valuable anyway. We don't want your pound. We don't want your American worthless dollar. We don't want it. We don't need it. We don't want it. We're not going to take it from you the way that you took it from us. We just ask that you alleviate the poverty of the people, of Hull. Alleviate the poverty of the City of London. Please stop harming all of these working class gig economy workers that are delivering your tea on the high street. Can you stop doing that? Can you give everybody back the NHS? Here, we'll fund the rebuilding of your infrastructure that's falling apart. Here, America, we'll refund your bridges. You'll have bridges again. Okay, we don't want all your broken ass GM trucks that don't have semiconductors in them because you did stupid trade wars and you don't make anything. We don't want your laptops that are falling apart and don't have semiconductors because you don't build them and you paid all. We don't want your colonial pipeline that you pay $3 an hour IT people to maintain the internet and digital security for it, and now it fell apart. We don't want your pipeline because we're too busy making green technology. We don't want that. What we ask is that you support the indigenous peoples whose rightful land this is on to rebuild. Just build some solar panels, build some roads to move the materials that you're gonna get those on. Please try to be mutually cooperative and don't disequitably use this money that we're helping you with. And that's all we ask. We don't want all of you. You don't have anything. You've burned it all. You've burned the planet for us. They're not gonna say "fuck you, America." You fucking burn the planet. I'm gonna say it for them, but they're not gonna say that. They're just gonna be like, "Please," because they're much less stormtrooper than me. I spend half of my life going to private stormtrooper training facilities called private $20,000 a year schools that are Harvard feeder. Thank God I didn't go to Harvard. I would have been a terrible spook. I would have been working for Goldman Sachs I would have been like a commander for the U.S. military right now. They're not gonna say terrible things like that. They're just gonna be like, "Hey, alleviate poverty here. We'll help you do it. Mutually trade with each other. Respect each other's human rights, please." I kind of wish they would kind of call America out more, but that's what they're gonna ask you to do in about 10, 20 years. When the world isn't burning down because of your clown failed civilizations. Failed barbarian sewers, that call themselves America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, all of Europe. They're gonna come and it's gonna be fine. It'll be fine. But you know what you're gonna have to do though? You're gonna have to chill out, stop being racist, don't stop spewing yellow peril. The sooner you can stop regurgitating yellow peril bullshit and be honest about who the East Asians are, who the socialists are of the world, economics generally speaking, the history of World War II that wasn't won by the United States, that's a part of the problem. Europe apparently believes America won World War II. It didn't, but America is propagandized, even Europe, so-called smart, enlightened people, they never were, into believing false history
but they're always lying to each other. So what you're gonna have to do is, as quickly as possible, educate as many people as possible and try to be as honest as possible. I know being honest in America will get you 36 months or 10 years or 50 years or life in prison. It's hard to be honest in America, you know? Part of the reason why I can be honest is because I don't live in America. I live in decolonizing parts of Hawaii. If I was in Honolulu, I would have lost my job by now. I already lost my job twice in Oahu and Hawaii because they fire you for saying true things. Like unions are good actually, or worker cooperation is more important than America's a terrible shithole, and Honolulu is full of fucking Gusana Hawaiian and Asians that are working for the billionaire class in the military, building, overpriced apartments and abusing people in their $20,000, $30,000 a year private schools. And then I got fired. So I know it's hard to say true things in the West, in your academic, in your university, in your Discord, in your YouTube stream, in your Twitch stream, and YouTube video, in your family table, your dinner table, your workspace, your home life, your church, your club. Even in anarchist circles, they're too busy with Vosh being fed tubers, going CIA is good actually. I know it's hard to say anything true anywhere in the entire English and French and Spanish speaking world, but you gotta try. You gotta try your best. You gotta try your best to start saying true things, because it will help accelerate the rate at which things get better. You know, because it's going to be harder for the Chinese, the Vietnamese, the Cubans, and the rest of the indigenous socialist world to save you and to help you, you know, to actually do any actual help. You know, it's going to be harder for them if you're fighting their help. You're like, please take the vaccine. You don't want to be the person, if you're going, no, I don't want a vaccine, for the Western, illusory Western Christian ahistoriography. They need to give you, it's an inoculation against the Western virus. And if you're going, I don't want a vaccine, it's going to be hard for the Chinese to help you if they have to kind of like, and they're not going to like, you know, they're not going to force it in. They're going to be like, because if they start forcing things in that way on other countries, then they'll become like you. You know, forcing bombs and Tomahawk missiles into Afghanistan and Iraq, forcing unpayable neo-colonial loans into Africa, forcing English into Hawaiian. Hawaiians didn't ban Chinese when Chinese were never settler colonizers, definitely not here. When the Chinese arrived, they didn't force Hawaiians to speak Chinese, and the Hawaiians didn't force them to speak Chinese. You know who forced Hawaiian and Chinese to speak their language? White people. Americans. British. You know who forced... You know, the Hawaiians didn't say you can't be Buddhist, and the Chinese didn't say you can't practice your Hawaiian cultural religions. You know who did? The British, the French, and the Americans. The French forced Catholicism into Hawaii. The British forced their British Anglican and Protestant Christianity. And Americans said, you're not civilized and you're not human to be a Christian. That's why my parents are Catholic. So, they're not going to force things on America. So that means you have to be prepared to accept. You have to be prepared to accept, in mutual benefit and mutual cooperation, their support, you know, which they will be willing to give. They give it to Greece, they'll give it to Italy, they give it to South America, they give it to Central America, they give it to Africa. You're gonna need it. You're gonna need it, you know, because the Uyghurs are doing a lot better than you, you know. They have better healthcare than you, they have better food than you, they have better houses than you. I've seen Uyghur houses. I wish I had a fucking house, brand new, air-conditioned house with like solar-powered air conditioning. I wish I had that. And I'm living in the better non-American parts of Hawaii. You're gonna need it, so you gotta learn how to be honest, like sooner than later. You know, you gotta learn this. That's why sometimes I go extra hard on some of these streams. I'll be like, because there's a lot of condescending patriarchal bullshit. It's like, oh well, you know, they're okay this, but no. You're not. If you don't start and end every conversation with, holy shit, the Chinese have achieved 1.4 billion people, alleviating poverty, renewable technology, climate change without colonialism, without exacerbating and without invasion. They're the only civilization that hasn't built. The Roman, the Spanish, the French, even the Japanese, which took on a lot of Western characteristics. But anyway, the Japanese, the American, the French, the British, the Spanish, they all built their vast wealth and power for a small number of their people, even under sockdom circumstances, on the back of invasion and slaughter of entire continents, blood and spilling, slavery, genocide, pillaging of entire multiple continents. India, China, Africa. You know, China is a literal fucking. It's only natural that an indigenous civilization would do this, because they're the actual civilization. It is a miracle that they have built 1.4 billion people's poverty without having done what the West and every other imperial country has done. To build such a great, most advanced economy in the world without going from 11th poorest to with over a billion people suffering in starvation to out of poverty, thriving, supplanting the United States as a superpower. So if you don't, and then you have to start with America and its military-industrial complex. The United States is the greatest threat. It is by far. You add up all of its death and all of its oppression, all of its bombings, all of its sanctions, every country it's invaded, almost every country on Earth. It is not even close how much tyranny and oppression it has done relative to what any other country has done, and definitely not China. And definitely not Vietnam and all the other places that are working with the group of friends. China leading them for historical and cultural reasons. So if you don't start and end every conversation with that, you are a liar. You're participating, even if you say, well, I want to just help some Americans and I want to save the Chinese, you are a liar. Just saying I support the Chinese people overthrowing their government, they will never overthrow their government. The Chinese Communist Party will rule for a long, long, long time. You know why? Imagine, just, I know it's a, science fiction is not writing about people like meteorological intelligences orbiting nebulas, or wars between space Romans, the Romulans, and some kind of federated United States imperialist with fake democratic Western characteristics, like what Star Trek was about. That's not what takes a real imagination. Not imagining what a simulated intelligence in a computer would be like. That, you know what it takes a real imagination? And I say this as a professional science fiction writer. What takes a real imagination is imagine a government that actually functions. Can you imagine? I know name one science fiction story that doesn't end with despotic, authoritarian 1984 crushing everybody's rights, and what it doesn't end with evil megatech, Terrell Corp, Evil Corp running the government, working to oppress all the freedoms. Imagine a functioning government. That is, I suggest that it is impossible for anyone in the Western world to write a well-read and accepted and celebrated science fiction novel that begins and ends without any kind of, and then a twist at the end that actually, the utopia under this government was actually, it was the giver, it was the 1984, it was the Brave New World, it was the Matrix. That doesn't end with some kind of all-controlling governmental body actually twistedly manipulating everyone's mind with soma, or with computers, or with double think and double speak, the greatest imagination, the hardest thing to imagine that requires the greatest imagination is a functioning society with a government that works with, and businesses and government and people that work together successfully. That has never happened in the history of the entire Western universe. And that is what you will need to have the capacity to imagine to participate. As the English, French, or Spanish, as any Western, American, Canadian, New Zealand, Australian, European, and Indian and Japanese, and the people that are going along, that are enlightening themselves inside. That is what it will take, is the capacity to imagine that, and not just imagine that. Be honest about those that are succeeding at that, and not just be honest about those that are succeeding about that. Be honest about your failures. And not just like, it's capitalism. It is capitalism, but that's not it. There's much deeper than that. It's every system that interlocks with it. It's the way of being. It's the lying to oneself. It's the lying en masse. And the acceptance of these lies. It's the lack of freedom of anything, and pretending like freedom. The only true thing that Orwell said was that there is a lot of duplicity that's run in these governments, but it wasn't the Communist Party of the Soviet Union that was doing. It was the Western fascist and capitalist powers that were going in, that were operating on freedom and justice, that were doing the double speak and the double think, because Orwell was a fascist, normal British person. But we have to celebrate his books because he's anti-communist, and the West can't admit that. Anyways, it is now time to go off because the game, I have other things to be doing. So if you're Australian, I know STM is in the chat. I didn't read all your messages, but that's where we have to start, is stop lying about the Chinese to crush your own people, to take a bunch of US military money. Anarchists have to be honest that, in the West, because they have to be honest that, like, yes, some of this will require the tearing down of their own terrible structures, but you have to also be honest about those that have succeeded, and those in which you will not succeed, in taking down. And also you have to realize that Vosh is an anarchist,
And he loves spewing imperial. Anarchists are great, useful tools for the Westerners to false equivalence successful socialist, usually global South and global East countries. And you have to be very careful about that. That's where anarchists have to be honest. It's true that the United States does have to be, United States and many of these, Australia, these settler colonial capitalist hellscapes have to be, they're not legitimate. However, you also have to be honest about those which have been successful. Or you are like a fake anarchist. Anyways, so Neofeud is a cyberpunk video game that I made about the failures of feudalism, capitalism, racism, the Romans, the Greeks, the British, the French, the Spanish for thousands of years, and the Americans, and the future neo-feudal wastelands that America will reign over, and the rest of the West will reign over. But Neofeud is a cautionary tale, and it's a fiction, you know, that I hope doesn't come true. But it is a dystopic cyberpunk adventure game in the vein of Blade Runner with an overlay of Game of Thrones-like political intrigue. It is a game that is being not on sale, but it is a game that is like Disco Elysium with more cyberpunk characteristics and a little bit more overt in its commentary. It is a game that, if you can leave a very short review, it is massively appreciated. It does increase the likelihood that we will get the game seen in the algorithm. It does support everything that we do here at the indigenous Native Hawaiian Silver Spook Cooperative / Commune / Hui. Hui is a Hawaiian and Chinese word and Vietnamese and Maori word that means working together in cooperation for the mutual benefit of all, whether that's in housing with no landlords or in work with no bosses. So anyways, if you want to support that, you can check out Neofeud in this place. Also, you know, so those are like this. What does this person even know? Have you even read Karl Marx? Why are you speaking about leftism? Neofeud explored the depths that make up our capitalist reality, and I found the game to be a multidimensional representation of Marx's Das Kapital. This is by literal Marx's like grandniece Saima. I'm just kidding, but Neofeud does deal directly with criticisms that Marx brings up as well. Neofeud is also an itch.io, and it's also available for Mac and Linux on itch.io, and it's also available DRM free if you don't like digital rights management. It's also available if you don't want to install Steam for whatever reason. You can also support us at patreon.com/Neofeud. Neofeud on Patreon is a you can support us in an ongoing way. You can support us with you can get access to the Discord, the Silver Spook Discord. You can get access to the Silver Spook behind the scenes work, like on Neofeud 2, etc. So do consider that. I know I just said a lot of shit, but you know, sometimes some people need to hear true things in the empires of lies. How much is true words saying worth to you in your empire of disinformation, left, right, and center? Consider becoming a patron. Anyways, I'm like your BDSM dom. Except like, you know, oh my god, stop saying true things. It hurts my ego too much. So you can also follow at Silverspook Games at octodon.social, which is Mastodon. Mastodon is a non-capitalist and decentralized federated social media platform where you can support, where you can have a billionaire running a mega corporation doing the bidding of Wall Street and the military industrial complex and all the terrible places that I just talked about, called Twitter, which does get paid lots of money and takes multi-billion-dollar contracts from the US military to put up whatever it wants. Like, Cuba needs to be overthrown now. Vietnam needs to take America's Western aid and maneuver closer to it to make war in South China Sea now. So that's why I don't like Twitter. But Twitter does have greater access to disinformed idiots. So I need to inform people. So while I have access to the Death Star satellites, at Silver Spook Guy, you can follow. And at Silver Spook Guy is the personal one. You can also follow at Silver Spook Games, minus the E in silver. At Silver Spook Games for the games related stuff like Neofeud 2, when Neofeud 2 is coming out, when Neofeud 1 goes on sale. You can also follow at Terminus C. Terminus Cyberstar is a low poly cyberpunk immersive sim like late 90s games like Deus Ex 1, System Shock 2. It's a game that is currently coming out in the near future sometime. I don't know when, but sometime in the near future. And it's a game that is really like coming along very well. These are some of the latest updates. It's got there's new videos out here. I'm not gonna play it now because I gotta get off quickly.
But if you want to follow this game that I'm the content director on, follow @TerminusC, and then you can join the Discord as well. Thanks to all of these gracious patron supporters. If you're a white Patreon supporter, you know, good on you. You have withstood an entire Silver Spook stream if you watched it and did a rage quit. So if you can withstand that, you're on your way. You know, you're on your way. You're on your way towards, becoming educated. Not that I don't have all the education. I don't have nearly enough. But I try to do my best to disinform some widely accepted left, right, and center beliefs in English-speaking world. So, anyways, thank you very much to all these people once again. Also, our friend Akemi is in the list. Akemi Show, who is our indigenous Okinawan comrade. Anyways, my ancestry oppressed Irish and German. My ancestry oppressed Irish and oppressor German. Yeah, you know. Well, I mean, if you can at least accept that, you know, that's a beginning to move in the direction, you know, that we need to be moving in. I have also oppressor Irish and German heritage in my background, you know, and I have to be like, yeah, I had a terrible racist cowboy grandpa who wanted to be a capitalist and beat the crap out of people for terrible reasons. So, you know, we all have that somewhere. Well, not everybody, but if you have it, you gotta address that and don't become white like my dad or buy into it. Until next time, keep your mirror shades polished, be excellent to each other, and I gotta run away because I got